Welcome to Chinese Novel Audio Wave, your go-to channel for captivating Chinese audiobooks. We bring you 2 daily uploads, ensuring you never miss a moment of the action. Stay tuned, subscribe, and let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1026 King Yun Dynasty Attacks. Chu Yunzi felt as if she was in a dream. In her dream, she was on the endless sea. The sea was silent and waveless. The sky was blue, cloudless, and the sea and sky were the same color. However, at this moment, the sky suddenly darkened, and a huge whirlpool appeared in the sky. Black clouds surrounded the whirlpool and continued to press downwards. The waves became bigger and bigger, and waves hit the boat where Chu Yunzi was. Yunzi was knocked dizzy by the waves on the boat. After an unknown amount of time, the boat she was in was shattered by the waves, and she fell into the sea. The moment he fell into the sea, Chu Yunzi suddenly woke up and sat up from the soft couch. She breathed heavily, and seeing the peaceful scene in the palace, Chu Yunzi breathed a sigh of relief. After regaining consciousness, Chu Yunzi's mind recalled what had happened before. When he thought of Lu Chen's revenge, Chu Yunzi felt both fear and endless aftertaste. She used her spiritual sense to find out what Chu Yukan and Lu Chen were doing. At this time, Lu Chen and Chu Yukan were cuddling together and talking about the Xia Dynasty. After Chu Yukan noticed that Chu Yunzi had woken up, she said directly to Lu Chen, "She's awake. If you have any questions, just ask her directly." After hearing this, Lu Chen suddenly became interested again. He felt Lu Chen's sudden excitement through Chu Yukan's body, and Chu Yunzi's delicate body trembled slightly for a moment. Lu Chen then said, "Poisonous woman, why don't you come over here quickly?" Hearing Lu Chen's commanding tone, Chu Yunzi once again controlled Chu Yukan's body with trepidation. But what Chu Yunzi didn't expect was that Lu Chen didn't want to be violent to her like before, but still let her lie in his arms. Chu Yunzi said weakly, "Yes, I'm sorry." Hearing Chu Yunzi's apology, Lu Chen sneered, "Do you think you can write off the things you did just by saying you're sorry?" Chu Yunzi continued, I don't expect you to forgive me for what I did. I will find a way to make it up to you." Lu Chen said calmly, "The best compensation you can give me is to become my slave girl." Having said this, Lu Chen turned over again, pressed Chu Yunzi under him, and then continued to take revenge. However, Lu Chen was not as fierce as before this time. He asked as if he was doing something, "What is my father doing now?" Lu Chen's tone of voice became much softer, and his self-proclaimed name changed from I to I. Hearing Lu Chen's question, Chu Yunzi answered while holding back, "Wu, Emperor is practicing in seclusion recently." Lu Chen continued to ask, "He didn't leave the Xia Dynasty?" Chu Yunzi said, "No." Lu Chen thought to himself that since he was not the Xinyu Emperor, there was nothing to worry about. It seems that the Emperor approaching Great Xia Dynasty this time is most likely the Emperor of King Yun Dynasty. There are only 3 emperors in King Yun Dynasty. Even if all 3 emperors come, they cannot be their opponents. But you still have to be prepared. The battle between the emperors will affect a very wide area, and the battlefield must not be placed in the Great Xia Dynasty. If the battlefield is left to the Great Xia Dynasty, no one knows how many worlds will be destroyed by then. It is best for them to take the initiative and defend the enemy from outside the country. Thinking of this, Lu Chen sped up his actions, planning to take revenge on Chu Yunzi a few more times before leading his troops to other star regions to intercept the invading enemies. However, not long after Lu Chen took action, he heard the system prompt sound in his mind. "Detected, sizzling, the fault has been eliminated. The system is being upgraded." The upgrade has been completed, and the system of many children and many blessings is activated again. Congratulations to the host for getting Chu Yukan pregnant, and the reward is the Imperial Soldier and the Imperial Daughter Sword. Lu Chen was stunned on the spot when he heard the system prompt. The system actually changed back again? Lu Chen asked in confusion, "System, why did you change back again?" The system replied coldly, "The host has successfully achieved enlightenment and has gotten rid of the influence of the bloodline of Emperor Shenyu. When giving birth to an heir, the luck and power of the bloodline will no longer be lost." Lu Chen realized that this was the case. "I didn't expect his system to be so flexible. In this way, he can safely and boldly irrigate again. But having said that, isn't it difficult for the emperor to conceive an heir? Why did Chu Yukan get pregnant so easily?" Lu Chen didn't think too deeply about it. He got pregnant as soon as he got pregnant. It was a good thing for him that Chu Yukan could give birth. The bloody sunset illuminates the earth. A man wearing a yellow dragon robe stood on the edge of the sky city, looking into the depths of the starry sky. After a while, Emperor Shenyu said to himself, "This is dead. It is really a waste. But it doesn't matter if you die, now my queen can give up completely." After sensing Lu Chen's death, Emperor Shenyu thought it was his illusion, so he made a special deduction and found that Lu Chen had indeed died. And the cause and effect between them is also broken. Being able to do this means that Lu Chen either died or became the emperor. But Emperor Shenyu didn't think that Lu Chen could achieve enlightenment and become emperor in such a short period of time. He didn't even think in this direction. Emperor Shenyu did not let Lu Chen's death affect his mood. Lu Chen's death was a good thing for him. Once Lu Chen died, Lu Chen and Chu Yunzi would be completely separated. Only when he seized Chu Yunzi's chaotic spirit body in the future could Chu Yunzi open her mind and devote herself without reservation. At this time, the Emperor Shenyu turned his head to look at the hall behind him. The cracks on the tripod in the hall were getting more and more. He continued to talk to himself, "We must hurry up." Then, he took out a set of exercises and used his spiritual power to copy several copies of the exercises. He said to the shadow guard in the dark, "Urge several princes to hurry up and practice this Tiandu Gong." A shadow guard walked out of the shadow of the Emperor Shenyu, put away the exercises and said, "Yes, Your Majesty." In the vast starry sky, a group of immortal boats formed a formation and moved towards the direction of the Great Xia Dynasty at the fastest speed. Wherever the immortal boats passed, the space was distorted, and the space fluctuated like waves. In front of the immortal boat team, there is a huge immortal boat shining with golden light. This giant immortal boat is as big as some small worlds. There are countless array patterns engraved on the immortal boat, and the array patterns emit a light blue light, which is very spectacular. The two emperors of King Yun Dynasty stood on the deck of the giant immortal boat and looked in the direction of Great Xia Dynasty. King Yun Dynasty did not send out 3 emperors. In their opinion, Great Xia Dynasty has only 1 emperor at most, and the opponent's strength is probably not very good. They sent out 2 emperors. However, although they only sent out 2 emperors, there was still an emperor standing next to the 2 of them. This emperor was the ancestor of the Ye family. The Ye family actually thought that 2 emperors were enough, but when they thought that if the Ye family did not have an emperor present, when King Yun Dynasty conquered Great Xia Dynasty and divided up Great Xia Dynasty's resources, I am afraid that the Ye family could only watch from the side. End of this chapter. Chapter 1027. Where does this sword come from? After Lu Chen and his wives and concubines had a good time, he summoned the army and held the first military parade in the Huangshan Star region. In the war involving the emperor, the army did not play a big role, but this was only in the early stage. After the war between the emperors was over, the rest of the things had to be left to the army to complete. The fall of a dynasty did not depend on whether the emperor of this dynasty was still there. For example, if the King Yun Dynasty wanted to seize the fortune of the Red Moon Dynasty, it was not enough to kill Pei Tianlu or drive Pei Tianlu away. After controlling the royal family of the Red Moon Dynasty, they were still trying to control the major forces of the Red Moon Dynasty. Only when all the major forces in a dynasty pledged allegiance to the new dynasty or force, the dynasty was considered destroyed. This is also the reason why the King Yun Dynasty did not massacre all the royal family of the Red Moon Dynasty in the first place. If the royal family of the Red Moon Dynasty was massacred, it would inevitably arouse the anger of the diehards. Although this universe respects strength, it must be said that there are many loyal people in this universe. For this part of existence, the army needs to be used to suppress it strongly. If it is really the King Yun dynasty that attacks, Lu Chen does not only intend to passively resist the invasion of the King Yun dynasty. He needs more buffer zones. It is best to bring all the star regions ruled by the King Yun dynasty and the Red Moon dynasty into the rule of the Great Xia Dynasty. The King Yun dynasty is coveting the fortune of the Great Xia Dynasty, and Lu Chen is also interested in the dynasty fortune of the King Yun dynasty. Since he broke through the Great Emperor, he can clearly feel the impact of the dynasty fortune. The dynasty fortune has a great increase in his strength and can also accelerate the improvement of his cultivation. If he wants to continue to improve his strength, he can no longer rely entirely on the dual cultivation method to improve his cultivation. Dual cultivation is not impossible, but after becoming a great emperor, the cultivation improvement brought by dual cultivation is no longer so obvious. Of course, this is only the case for Lu Chen, and the Tianhong Queen is an exception. Lu Chen stood on the deck of the Fiheng Xianzhou, quietly looking at the large-scale starship group in the distance. One after another, giant starships flew past Lu Chen, and the scene was very spectacular. Seeing this scene, the forces around the Great Xia Dynasty that were secretly ready to move were shocked by this scene. There are many forces in the star fields around the Great Xia Dynasty that have dealings with the Great Xia Dynasty. After realizing that the Emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty is not the Great Emperor, most of the forces have some ideas. Especially in the years when Lu Chen was in seclusion, many forces sent spies to inquire about the situation of the Great Xia Dynasty. Now Lu Chen's military review directly shattered the dreams of some people with ulterior motives. With so many starships, even if there are no emperor-level strong men, they are enough to push those forces that are only at the same level. After the military review, Lu Chen directly led these starships to the Fanhai star field. The Fanhai star field is a star field with little life world. This star field is not ruled by a dynasty, but only some low-level sect forces. The Fanhai star region is the only way for the King Yun dynasty to go to the Xia dynasty. It is a certain distance away from the Huangshan star region, so it is very appropriate to place the battlefield in the Fanhai star region. The news of the Xia dynasty's military parade and Xia's dispatch of troops to the Fanhai star region soon reached Qi Zong's ears through some spies of the Ye family. On the ferry boat of the King Yun dynasty, Qi Zong stood on the deck of the ferry boat, quietly listening to the information sent back by the Ye family. After listening to the report from the Ye family, Qi Zong said, "It seems that the Great Xia dynasty has already noticed that we are approaching the Great Xia dynasty." Ye Hongyun, the ancestor of the Ye family, said, "The Great Xia dynasty's space development companies are all over the Red Moon dynasty. It is normal for them to find out some information." Qi Zong touched his grey beard and said, "I just don't know if their spies have found out the strength of the King Yun dynasty." Ye Hongyun said, "I'm afraid they don't know that we have 3 emperors coming this time, otherwise they wouldn't take the initiative to attack. For an emperor, fighting within the scope of the dynasty he founded is the strongest. After all, there is the increase brought by the dynasty's luck. Once he leaves his own dynasty and loses the increase of the dynasty's luck, his strength will drop significantly." And Lu Chen actually took the initiative to leave the Great Xia dynasty and planned to fight them in the Fanhai star region. This is obviously an unwise decision for the Great Xia dynasty, but this is just the opinion of Ye Hongyun and others. Qi Zong said, "It's good that way. In the decisive battle in the Fanhai star region, without the imperial luck of Xia, they will be defeated faster." At this time, in the eyes of Qi Zong and the other 2, the Xia dynasty was already a lamb to be slaughtered, and the 3 of them were all smiling. A few days later, the War Dragon army led by Lu Chen arrived at the Fanhai star region first. In order not to affect those people in the lower worlds, Lu Chen also took the initiative to send troops to move the natives of those lower worlds out of the Fanhai star region. On the Fiheng immortal boat, Lu Chen's bedroom. Lu Chen was meditating and practicing, and Bai Qingqing suddenly appeared in the bedroom. Your Majesty, the people of the lower worlds in the Fanhai Star region have basically moved away. Facing the strength of the Xia Dynasty, the natives of the lower worlds in the Fanhai Star region had no room for resistance. This universe is so cruel. Fortunately, it was the Great Xia Dynasty that arrived earlier. If it was the King Yun Dynasty that arrived earlier, once the Great Xia Dynasty appeared in the Fanhai Star region, war would have broken out immediately and would have quickly spread to all the lower worlds in the Fanhai Star region. At that time, the natives of those lower worlds would have had no choice but to wait for death in their own worlds. Those in the lower world can be considered the lucky ones among the misfortunes. Lu Chen opened his eyes. As long as we move away, the next war can be fought freely. Speaking of this, Lu Chen suddenly thought of something, and then took out a slender sword from the system space. Emperor's sword, Emperor's arms, the sword of Empress Tianhong in her previous life. Lu Chen gently drew his hand across the blade of the sword and said to himself, although the sword is good, it's a pity that it's not for me. When Lu Chen saw the name of this sword, he knew that this sword was not suitable for him. As a result, as soon as he saw the introduction of the Emperor's sword, he instantly understood why the system would reward him with this sword. At this moment, in a certain room in Fiheng Immortal Boat, Empress Tianhong suddenly opened her eyes. The murderous aura was raging in her body, and the entire ferry boat vibrated due to this. Empress Tianhong scanned the Fiheng ferry boat with her spiritual consciousness in disbelief. She looked stunned. She actually sensed the sword of her previous life. Her sword should have fallen on the outer battlefield. How could it appear here? And it's still in Lu Chen's hands. The next moment, Empress Tianhong appeared in front of Lu Chen, her cold eyes staring straight at the Emperor's sword in her hand. Where did this sword come from? Empress Tianhong became more and more curious about Lu Chen's identity. Lu Chen could not only bring her back to life and restore her soul, but even her sword was in Lu Chen's hand. Lu Chen inserted the sword into the scabbard, then threw it to Empress Tianhong and said, I picked it up. Naturally, Empress Tianhong would not believe Lu Chen's answer. The battlefield in the outer world was so huge, how could it be that her sword was picked up by Lu Chen by such a coincidence? Etc. There seems to be something wrong with this sword. End of chapter. Chapter 1028. Did the Great Xia Dynasty Emperor just run away like that? The Rainbow Queen didn't remember that her sword was an imperial weapon. But the aura of the sword in her hand was exactly the same as the sword she used in her previous life. And she could also feel that the sword was very excited after returning to her hands. She remembered that her sword could only be regarded as a semi-sacred weapon at most. How come it has become an imperial weapon now? The Rainbow Queen's eyes fell on Lu Chen again. The imperial sword was taken out by Lu Chen, so the upgrade of the imperial sword must be related to Lu Chen. The Rainbow Queen wanted to ask Lu Chen how the imperial sword was upgraded to become an imperial weapon, but she finally stopped talking. After a while, the Rainbow Queen asked, are you going to give this sword to me? Although the sword is her own sword, the imperial sword has become an imperial weapon, and the Rainbow Queen is not sure whether Lu Chen will give her an imperial weapon to use. There are not even a few sacred weapons in this universe, let alone imperial weapons. Lu Chen said, weapons can only exert their greatest power when they are in the hands of the right people. Although this sword is of a high grade, it is too light and I am not used to it. The heart of the Tianhong Empress moved slightly. So, Lu Chen really intends to give her the imperial sword? The imperial sword has been with her for countless years. The sword is stained with a strong evil spirit, which can help her better activate the killing power and greatly improve her strength. Seeing the anxious expression of the Tianhong Empress, Lu Chen said lightly, although I am not used to it, this is an imperial weapon after all. The Tianhong Empress frowned, what are your conditions? The Tianhong Empress also knew that Lu Chen was unlikely to return the imperial sword to her so easily. After all, it was an imperial weapon. Lu Chen said, I haven't thought of anything you can bring out that's worth my attention to exchange for the imperial sword. At this point, Lu Chen pondered for a moment and continued, how about this, you use it first, and I'll tell you when I think of the conditions for exchanging the imperial sword. The Rainbow Queen looked at Lu Chen with a cold face. She knew that Lu Chen was deliberately dragging it out to keep her hanging. As long as Lu Chen didn't talk about the conditions, she would always owe Lu Chen a favor. But in order to keep the imperial sword, she would not hesitate to owe Lu Chen a favor. The Rainbow Queen then said, okay. After the voice fell, the Rainbow Queen put away the imperial sword, fearing that Lu Chen would regret it. Just as Lu Chen was about to say something, a buzzing roar suddenly came from the distant void, and then 3 terrifying pressures descended on the Fanhai Star region. Lu Chen's expression immediately became serious. The King Yun dynasty is here. Lu Chen immediately gave the order, and all the starships lined up in a row and retreated. The next battle was a battle between the emperors, and it would be the turn of these starships to play later. Lu Chen then released his divine sense and explored the void in the distance. In his divine sense, there was a ferry boat that was like a small world slowing down, and there were dozens of ferry boats behind the huge ferry boat. Seeing this giant ferry boat, Lu Chen was slightly stunned. How could the dynasty on the edge of the universe have such a huge ferry boat? He thought that the Fiheng ferry boat was big enough, but today he actually saw a ferry boat that was bigger than the Fiheng ferry boat. I'm afraid that 10 Fiheng ferry boats combined are not as big as the ferry boat of the King Yun dynasty. But then again, although the ferry boat of the King Yun dynasty is huge, the attack array on the ferry boat may not be as many as the Fiheng ferry boat, and it may only be superficial. Just when Lu Chen used his divine sense to explore the situation of the ferry boat of the King Yun dynasty, 3 powerful divine senses suddenly hit Lu Chen's divine sense. Lu Chen did not hesitate at all and directly withdrew his consciousness. At the same time, on the giant ferry boat of King Yun dynasty, the 3 emperors looked sharply at the void in the distance. After a while, Qi Zong said, the consciousness just now should be that of the emperor of Xia dynasty. Qi Shi smiled and said, he has already noticed that we have 3 emperors this time. I guess he is scared and wants to run away now. Ye Hongyun said, that may not be the case. There are so many strange things in Xia dynasty. It is hard to say whether Xia dynasty has obtained any inheritance. It is possible that they have magic weapons that can threaten the emperor. Ye Hongyun has read the intelligence collected by the Ye family spies. He does not think that Xia dynasty is just an ordinary dynasty. Although he also does not think that Xia dynasty is the opponent of King Yun dynasty, he is more cautious than Qi Zong and Qi Shi. The battle between emperors, even if it is a lion fighting a rabbit, needs to be used with all their strength, because no one can tell what tricks the emperor has hidden. Those who can become the great emperor are basically old men who have lived for tens of thousands of years. If they don't have some skills, they can't live to the time of becoming an emperor. Qi Zong said, next, let's see if they will withdraw their troops. If they withdraw their troops, it proves that they don't have magic weapons that can threaten the great emperor. After the voice fell, Qi Zong also released his divine sense, intending to investigate the fleet of the Great Xia Dynasty. As Qi Zong's divine sense swept across the fleet of the Great Xia Dynasty, the smile on Qi Zong's face gradually solidified. There were many soldiers in the God Transformation Realm and the Return to Ruins Realm on those fleets. It is not surprising that a dynasty has a large number of cultivators in the God Transformation Realm and the Return to Ruins Realm, but the Great Xia Dynasty is only a dynasty that was established not long ago. How could it have so many cultivators in the God Transformation Realm and the Return to Ruins Realm? Would the Great Xia Dynasty summon all the cultivators in the Ruins Realm of the entire dynasty? Qi Zong felt vaguely that the overall strength of the dynasty's soldiers he brought was not as good as that of the Great Xia Dynasty. But soon Qi Zong's brows relaxed. He thought to himself that the key to the victory or defeat of this war was their emperors, and these soldiers of the dynasty were just responsible for the finishing touches. No matter how strong the overall strength of the opponent's army was, it would not pose any threat to the three emperors. But soon Qi Zong discovered another problem. After he used his spiritual sense to scan the entire fleet of the Great Xia Dynasty, he did not find any emperors. Qi Zong retracted his spiritual sense, turned his head and said to Ye Hongyun, "Ancestor Ye, use your spiritual sense to explore the situation of those immortal boats of the Great Xia Dynasty now." Ye Hongyun did not ask Qi Zong why. He immediately released his spiritual sense. After sensing that the overall strength of the soldiers brought by the Great Xia Dynasty was very high, he was also slightly surprised, but he did not care too much. Ye Hongyun's idea was the same as Qi Zong's. The key to victory or defeat in a war involving the Great Emperor was the Great Emperor, not the soldiers. However, Ye Hongyun also quickly discovered something was wrong. He used his spiritual sense to scan all the immortal boats of the Great Xia Dynasty, but did not find any great emperors. After Ye Hongyun withdrew his spiritual sense, he murmured, "Did the Great Emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty just run away?" Just now, the three of them felt the Great Emperor's spiritual sense exploring their situation, but when they explored the other side's situation, the Great Emperor disappeared. Doesn't this prove that the other side has a high probability of running away? End of this chapter. Take a day off. Take a day off, end of this chapter. Chapter 1030 Strange Magical Power. Lu Chen did not choose to let the Rainbow Queen take action at the first time. He is now a great emperor, but he lacks practical experience. This time is a good opportunity for him to practice, and he is only a clone at this time. In addition, the Rainbow Queen is also watching. If there is any danger, it will not be too late to let the Rainbow Queen take action. Looking at the giant palm slapping towards him, Lu Chen raised his hands, slapped and pulled his palms, and a stream of ice spiritual power was released from his palms. Flying snow formation. In an instant, a huge white formation pattern appeared under the three Dharma images. After the formation appeared, heavy snow fell in the void, and the snow directly merged into the Dharma images after contacting Qi Zong and Qi Shi. Qi Zong and Qi Shi immediately realized that something was wrong. This formation was actually suppressing their cultivation and strength. Their cultivation was instantly suppressed to the quasi-emperor realm, and as time went on, their cultivation continued to decline. At the same time, Lu Chen formed seals with his hands, and his golden body emitted a purple light, and a thick black cloud appeared above the flying snow formation. Heavenly Thunder Art. As Lu Chen's skills were running, a rough lightning shot out from the black cloud, instantly defeating Qi Shi's giant palm. Seeing this scene, Qi Shi's face became even gloomier. Although he was just testing for the first time, he also took out nearly 50% of his strength, but the opponent easily resolved his attack. It seems that the strength of this emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty is much stronger than they imagined. After seeing Qi Shi's attack being resolved, Qi Zong on the side was no longer idle. He gathered his spiritual power and punched out. Zhen Shan He. A huge mountain appeared in the void, and the terrifying pressure made everyone in the Fiheng Xianzhou feel it. The pressure made people breathless, and their bodies seemed to be fixed and unable to move. But in just a moment, Lu Chen got rid of the pressure of Zhen Shan He. Lu Chen's Dharma image slowly raised his palm and shouted, "Purple Sun Ice!" As the voice fell, a purple sun appeared behind Lu Chen's Dharma image, and then the surrounding void was shrouded in cold air. The flying snow formation had already greatly reduced the temperature in the void. As Lu Chen's purple sun ice power was running, the temperature of the entire void dropped again. The next moment, the illusion of Zhen Shanhe covered by a purple halo was frozen in an instant. Seeing this scene, Qi Zong and the other two were stunned at the same time. They never thought that Lu Chen was so strong. In their opinion, Lu Chen was just a great emperor who had just broken through. Qi Zong's cultivation was the second level of the great emperor, and he had just used 80% of his strength. Zhen Shanhe was already one of Qi Zong's trump cards, but when facing the lord of the Great Xia Dynasty, he was easily taken over by the other party. Sect Master Qi turned his head and looked at Ye Hongyan and said, "Ancestor Ye, it seems that we have encountered a tough opponent." Ye Hongyan said, "Then let's attack at the same time. Since the two emperors have difficulty dealing with the emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty, then they will attack together." He does not believe that the man can resist the attack of three emperors at the same time. As soon as Ye Hongyan finished speaking, a new emperor's Dharma image appeared in front of Lu Chen, but that emperor's Dharma image was outside the flying snow formation, and his cultivation and strength were not suppressed. Seeing another emperor coming out, the sword of the emperor in the hand of the Tianhong Empress became restless, and the Tianhong Empress herself also became restless. Seeing the killing power of the Tianhong Empress raging wildly, Pei Tianlu, who was standing aside, suddenly felt a chill on his back and trembled all over. He could see that the Tianhong Empress could no longer control herself. At this moment, Pei Tianlu was already mourning for the three people of the Qi sect in his heart. If they offend this evil star, their fate will probably be the destruction of their souls. After Ye Hongyan's Dharma image appeared, a huge abacus quickly condensed in his Dharma image's hand. Seeing this abacus, Lu Chen immediately had a bad premonition. Immediately afterwards, Ye Hongyan's Dharma image quickly fiddled with the abacus, and the sound of da-da-da of the abacus rang out in the entire void. Hearing the sound of the abacus, Lu Chen suddenly felt dizzy, and then, Ye Hongyan's body radiated golden light, which directly penetrated into Lu Chen's Dharma image. The next moment, Lu Chen heard a deep voice. "Money and life exchange." Lu Chen was stunned for a moment, and soon he saw his life force quickly passing away. Is this a magical power? Lu Chen looked at this scene with some astonishment. It was the first time he saw such a means of attacking people. The universe is so big that there are all kinds of strange things. He encountered such a strange means of attack at his doorstep. When the Great Xia Dynasty expands outward in the future, he will probably encounter more strange and bizarre moves. Unfortunately, Ye Hongyan's magical power did not have much effect on him, because he became an emperor through the way of creation, and his way of creation integrated the way of life. He only needed to slightly operate the King Mu Chang Sheng Gong, and the lost life force would be quickly replenished. But it must be said that Ye Hongyan's move was indeed quite powerful. Lu Chen discovered that this move not only worked on his body, but also on his soul. If it weren't for the King Mu Chang Sheng Gong that could repair his soul, he would probably be severely injured by this move. Lu Chen doubted that someone with such a terrifying magical power would be willing to stay in the marginal star field of the universe. As Ye Hongyan performed his magic, Lu Chen's Dharma image became fainter and fainter, and it looked like it was about to collapse. Ye Hongyan immediately said to Qi Zong and Qi Shi, "Take action." Hearing Ye Hongyan's words, the two no longer hesitated. Zhen Shanhe. Da-ri burning heaven palm. Seeing that the two phantoms in the void were about to crush Lu Chen's Dharma image, Lu Chen immediately activated King Mu Chang Sheng Gong. In a moment, his consumed life force was instantly restored, and the Dharma image also shone brightly at this moment. Seeing that Lu Chen's Dharma image instantly returned to normal, Ye Hongyan frowned. How is this possible? Seeing that Lu Chen had recovered, Qi Shi and Qi Zong also had a bad premonition in their hearts. The two immediately took out all their strength and infused spiritual power into their spells. Lu Chen shouted loudly. "Purple Sun Ice!" This time, the purple sun behind Lu Chen's Dharma body was obviously larger, and the cold air it emitted turned purple. When the cold air came into contact with Qi Zong and Qi Shi's magic, the illusions of Zhen Shanhe and Dai burning heaven palm were instantly frozen. This. Qi Zong and Qi Shi did not believe in evil, and they increased the infusion of spiritual power again. Qi Shi roared loudly and said, "Break it for me." As Qi Shi shouted, the frozen Dai burning heaven palm actually broke the ice of the purple sun ice at this moment. Seeing the giant palm getting closer and closer to Lu Chen's Dharma body, the three people suddenly felt nervous, and a feeling of fear surged in their hearts. End of this chapter. Chapter 1031, The Rainbow Queen Takes Action. What happened? The three of them looked at the magnificent ferry boat behind Lu Chen. For some reason, they all had a strange feeling just now, a feeling that their lives were being held in the hands of others. Fear filled their hearts in an instant, as if there was something particularly terrifying in that ferry boat. Something was wrong. Very wrong. At this moment, Qi Shi's great sun-burning heaven palm was about to touch Lu Chen's Dharma body, but at this critical moment, suddenly, a figure appeared under the great sun-burning heaven palm. The next moment, a cold light flashed, and Qi Shi's great sun-burning heaven palm was instantly cut in half, and then slowly dissipated. This sudden scene stunned Qi Zong and the other two again. When the three came to their senses, their eyes all fell on the body of the Tianhong Queen. Seeing that the person coming was a woman, the faces of the three people instantly darkened. The first Dharma image that appeared in front of them was a man, and now there is a female emperor, which means that Daxia really has two emperors. They thought that Daxia only had one emperor, but they didn't expect that they miscalculated. Moreover, judging from the strength of these two emperors, the two of them are enough to resist the three of them. Especially the female emperor who just came out, she has a very heavy evil spirit, and such a heavy evil spirit is probably only possessed by people who have crawled out of countless dead bodies. Qi Zong and the other two stared at Tianhong Empress, and did not take the next step. They already knew where the breath that frightened them just now came from, it was the female emperor in front of them. Tianhong Empress clenched the sword in her hand, and her phoenix eyes swept over the Dharma images of Qi Zong and the other two. The evil spirit on her body could not help but overflow. For a moment, the void where they were was shrouded by an evil spirit. Feeling this terrifying evil spirit, Qi Zong and the other two were stunned. They had already determined that Empress Tianhong was a female devil who had killed countless people through the evil spirit on Empress Tianhong, but they did not expect that the evil spirit they just felt was just the tip of the iceberg. At this time, Qi Zong had already thought of escaping. He was the strongest among the three emperors, so he could feel the horror of Empress Tianhong even more. The aura emitted by Empress Tianhong was only the second level of the emperor, and Qi Zong himself was also the second level of the emperor, but his second level of the emperor was not as heavy as the evil spirit on Empress Tianhong. Obviously, this woman's strength far exceeded his. Just when the two sides were in a stalemate, Empress Tianhong turned her head slightly, glanced at Lu Chen's Dharma image behind her with the corner of her eyes, and then said expressionlessly, "Leave it to me." Lu Chen also saw the evil spirit running wild on Empress Tianhong, and at this time Empress Tianhong's fighting will had been completely aroused. Lu Chen sighed slightly. He wanted to test his own strength, but it seemed that he couldn't do it next. Forget it. Since Empress Tianhong couldn't hold back any longer, let Empress Tianhong do it next. Then Lu Chen said, "Okay, be careful." After receiving Lu Chen's affirmative answer, Empress Tianhong swung her sword, and a terrifying killing force instantly swept through Qi Shi's Dharma image. Before Qi Shi could react, the Dharma image golden body condensed by the soul was instantly cut in half. Seeing this horrifying scene, Qi Zong and the other two woke up as if from a dream. Qi Zong shouted, "No, this is the killing force. She is the emperor who proved her Dao by killing." Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. There are not many emperors in this universe who master the Dao of killing. The most famous one is Emperor Shenyu. In those days, Emperor Shenyu attacked other dynasties and sects frantically for his own Dao, and killed countless emperors. Almost every emperor who has mastered the way of killing is a madman who only knows how to kill, and their strength is much stronger than that of ordinary emperors. It can be said that they are invincible in the same realm. Not to mention being invincible in the same realm, even killing enemies across several realms is no problem. Most of the emperors who died at the hands of Emperor Shenwu in the past were in higher realms than Emperor Shenwu. For emperors with similar cultivation, Emperor Shenwu would not even look at them more. Qi Zong immediately regretted it. Why did they listen to the Ye family's deception and come to the Great Xia Dynasty to provoke this killing god? The key is why this emperor who proved his way by killing would come to such a wild star field to hide. Isn't this cheating people? The emperor who mastered the way of killing should not go to the prosperous star field of the universe, or go to the outer domain to kill people everywhere. It's too bullying to come to the edge of the universe to stay. At this time, not only Qi Zong, but also Qi Shi and Ye Hongyun were also panicking. That was the great emperor who mastered the way of killing. Even if they had 3 great emperors now, they might not be enough for the other party to kill. Ye Hongyun had already cursed Ye Xingtan's 18 generations of ancestors in his heart. How did Ye Xingtang collect the information? The Great Xia Dynasty hid such a killing god, and Ye Xingtang didn't know anything about it. This is troublesome. This time when they go back, they must take the Ye family away from the Red Moon Dynasty. But the question now is whether they can still leave? At this time, Qi Zong restrained his breath and said politely, "Junior didn't know that the senior was here. I hope the senior will forgive me. I will leave now." Qi Zong also knew that the other party would probably not listen to him, but he had to try. After all, he was not stupid enough to think that the 3 great emperors were the opponents of a great emperor who mastered the power of killing. After hearing Qi Zong's words, Empress Tianhong just raised the sword in her hand, without any nonsense, and slashed out again. A sword energy of dozens of kilometers flew out instantly, and the sword energy contained destructive killing power. Feeling this terrifying sword energy, Qi Zong and Ye Hongyun did not hesitate to retract the Dharma body, then abandoned the immortal boat and fled from the Fanhai star field at the fastest speed. Before leaving the Fanhai star field, Qi Zong sent a message to the cultivators of the King Yun dynasty, "The other side has an emperor who has the power of killing, everyone evacuate immediately." When they heard that the Great Xia dynasty had an emperor who had the power of killing, the cultivators of the King Yun dynasty were scared out of their wits. For a while, the immortal boats of the King Yun dynasty moved away from the Fanhai star field at the fastest speed. Seeing that Empress Tianhong only used 2 swords to scare away the 3 emperors of the King Yun dynasty, Lu Chen couldn't help but feel a little depressed. He and the Rainbow Queen had the same cultivation level, so why did the other party not take him seriously when he attacked? And when the Rainbow Queen attacked, the 3 emperors were scared and ran away. Are the emperors who master the way of killing really so terrifying? I don't know why, when Lu Chen thought of the scene of himself suppressing the killing god, the Rainbow Queen, under him, he felt a strange sense of conquest. The Rainbow Queen was such a terrifying woman, but she became his woman, and she also had to give birth to his children. As a man, it is impossible to say that there is no sense of accomplishment in my heart. At the same time, the Rainbow Queen slashed out with a sword again, and a space vortex immediately appeared in front of her. Then the Rainbow Queen entered the space vortex, and when she appeared again, she had blocked the way of the 3 emperors of the Qi sect. End of this chapter. Chapter 1032. How could you still be alive? After the Qi Zong trio escaped from the Brahma Sea Star territory, they used their spiritual consciousness to explore the situation behind them from time to time. They found that there was no trace of Empress Tianhong, and they were slightly relieved. At this time, Qi Shi asked angrily, "Ancestor Ye, should you give us an explanation? The Great Xia Dynasty has an emperor who has the power to kill. Why didn't you tell us at all? Is it possible that your Ye family wants to use the sword to kill people and destroy our King Yun dynasty?" Facing Qi Shi's questioning, Ye Hongyun also felt a little aggrieved. He didn't know that there was an emperor in the Great Xia dynasty who had the power to kill. If he had known that there was such a murderous god in the Xia dynasty, he would have run away with the Ye family long ago. How could he still lead people to attack the Xia dynasty? No wonder he vaguely felt that Xia dynasty might have some trump card from the beginning, otherwise how could Xia Dynasty dare to take the initiative, but he didn't expect that Xia Dynasty's trump card would be such a terrifying existence. Before Ye Hongyun could say anything, Qi Zong said from the side, "Old ancestor Ye, our King Yun dynasty has suffered terribly at the hands of your Ye family this time." Ye Hongyun sighed and said, "Don't worry, Ancestor Qi. When I return to the Ye family, I will definitely find a way to compensate the King Yun dynasty. As for the existence of the Xia dynasty, I didn't know about it in advance. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken the initiative to join you in attacking the Xia dynasty." "Oh, who would have thought that an emperor who proves his way through killing would appear in such a wild star field?" Qi Zong said, "Maybe the other party just happened to be passing by, but no matter what, we have provoked each other." Having said this, Qi Zong once again used his spiritual consciousness to explore behind them. Seeing that Empress Tianhong still didn't follow them, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Fortunately, that woman didn't follow them." However, as soon as Qi Zong finished speaking, they suddenly felt a sense of death threat. The next moment, a sword energy appeared out of thin air in front of them. After sensing the danger, the three people quickly evaded. When the sword energy flew behind them, the immortal boats behind them were instantly cut in half. Most of the monks brought by the King Yun dynasty and the Ye family were killed by that sword. Even those who were lucky enough to survive were almost always seriously injured. At this moment, a huge space crack appeared where the sword energy flew out before, and then a woman wearing a red dress and exuding a strong evil spirit walked out of the space crack. Seeing Empress Tianhong catching up so quickly, the hearts of the three Qi Zongs were once again filled with fear. They knew that an emperor with the power of killing would not be able to escape easily. After Qi Zongan came to his senses, he quickly reminded Qi Shi and Ye Hongyun, "It seems that she is not going to let us go. If we want to survive, we have to fight her desperately, don't hold back, and use all our strength." As soon as the words fell, Qi Zong immediately released the Dharma appearance golden body, and Ye Hongyun and Qi Shi also immediately released the Dharma appearance of the Great Emperor. Seeing that the three of them had no intention of escaping, Empress Tianhong's killing power instantly blocked the entire space. She didn't even use her magic form and rushed directly towards Qi Zong. Qi Zong shouted loudly, "Suppress the mountains and rivers." Empress Tianhong looked at the illusion in the sky with an expressionless face. She swung the Emperor's sword and struck out with a single strike. Without any bells and whistles, the sword energy was packed with killing power and directly shattered the illusion of the mountains and rivers. Seeing this scene, Qi Zong broke out in a cold sweat. Is this the Emperor who proves his way through killing? His strength is too terrifying. What kind of evil had he done to allow them to encounter such a terrifying existence? But it's too late to say anything now. They will either severely injure this woman or be killed by her. Then the three people of Qi Zong and Empress Tianhong started a battle. In this battle, the three people of Qi Zong were crushed and slashed. Everywhere they passed, the worlds were destroyed by the aftermath of their battle. Fortunately, they are located at the edge of the universe, and there is not much life in the star fields in these places. Otherwise, Empress Tianhong would be able to cause more killings, and the evil aura on her body would become heavier and her strength would be stronger. A few days passed in a blink of an eye. Lu Chen sat on the deck of the Fiheng immortal boat and looked into the distance. Even though he was several light years away, Lu Chen could still see the battle breaking out in the distance. The big explosions that occur when worlds are blown apart are like fireworks, dazzling and beautiful. The Emperor's vitality is very tenacious. Although Empress Tianhong is the Emperor who knows how to kill, it will take a certain amount of time for her to completely kill an Emperor, not to mention that the opponent has 3 Emperors. Lu Chen was not in a hurry at all. He was already prepared to stay in the Brahma Sea Star territory for a year and a half. At this time, Lu Chen turned his head slightly and looked at Pei Tianlu and said, "Mr. Pei, how long do you think it will take for the battle to end?" Pei Tianlu glanced at the exploding world of life a few light years away and replied, "With the Empress's strength, the 3 Qi Zone people may be consumed to death in less than a month. Lu Chen said, 1 month, that's not too long. At this moment, a stream of light suddenly rushed directly towards the Fiheng immortal boat. Seeing this stream of light, Lu Chen was stunned for a moment. Why are there still people running towards him now? Just when Lu Chen was distracted, Qi Shi's Dharma appearance had appeared in front of the Fiheng immortal boat, and struck towards the Fiheng immortal boat with a palm. After the battles of the past few days, Qi Zong and his men have understood that it is absolutely impossible to defeat the Rainbow Empress with the power of their 3 great emperors. Now they can only think of another way. Since the Rainbow Empress appeared in the Great Xia Dynasty, it proves that there is some relationship between the Rainbow Empress and the founder of the Great Xia Dynasty. If the founder of the Great Xia Dynasty can be directly controlled, the Rainbow Empress may be forced to stop. So Qi Zong and Ye Hongyun tried their best to hold back the Rainbow Empress and let Qi Shi come to find Lu Chen. Seeing Qi Shi attack Lu Chen, Pei Tianlu hurriedly left the Fiheng Xianzhou and directly showed his Dharma body. Then, he also slapped out with 1 palm. The 2 palms collided in the void, and the spiritual power wave generated by the explosion pushed the Fiheng Xianzhou dozens of kilometers away. However, the Fiheng Xianzhou is an imperial spiritual weapon. Not to mention being affected by the aftermath of the battle, even if Qi Shi slapped it with 1 palm, the Fiheng Xianzhou would not have any problems. Seeing that it was Pei Tianlu who blocked his attack, Qi Shi was stunned in the void. He didn't expect to see Pei Tianlu in this place. And looking at Pei Tianlu's appearance, Pei Tianlu seemed to have recovered his strength, and the dead air on his body had dissipated. How could this be possible? Pei Tianlu was a man whose time was coming to an end. Who cured him? Qi Shi said in disbelief, how could you still be alive? The reason why King Yun dynasty didn't dare to move against Yu dynasty at the beginning was because Pei Tianlu was too powerful. Just Pei Tianlu alone was enough to compete with the 3 emperors of King Yun dynasty. If it weren't for Pei Tianlu's time coming to an end, they wouldn't have taken action against Yu dynasty. Now Pei Tianlu not only didn't die, but even dispelled the dead air on his body and returned to normal. There was already an emperor who mastered the way of killing, plus Pei Tianlu, what chance did they have of winning? At this moment, Qi Shi was completely desperate. He originally thought that he could force Tianhong Empress to stop by controlling the founder of the Great Xia Dynasty, but now it seems that all this is just their delusion. End of this chapter. Take a day off. I am not feeling well, please take a day off. End of this chapter. Chapter 1034 Qi Shi and number 039, S Loyalty. Qi Zong controlled his own Dharma image, and slammed the clones of the Emperor sword that surrounded him in the void one by one. At the same time, his main body was also approaching the Tianhong Empress quickly. Since he couldn't run away, he simply didn't run away. Qi Zong was ready to die with Tianhong Empress. They were both at the 2nd level of the Great Emperor. He didn't believe that he couldn't do anything to Tianhong Empress when he was burning his soul. Although he looked desperate, Qi Zong still had some thoughts in his heart. The catastrophe was coming, and he believed that no great emperor wanted to be injured at this time. They were both at the 2nd level of the Great Emperor. If he exploded his soul, it would hurt that woman anyway. If that crazy woman was afraid of exploding her soul after seeing how desperate he was, she would stop chasing them. Obviously, Qi Zong's idea was a bit too naive. Empress Tianhong was not worried that he would self-destruct his soul. On the contrary, forcing a great emperor to self-destruct his soul was what she was happy to see. What she wanted to see most was the despair in the enemy's eyes. Empress Tianhong's body turned into a red stream of light and instantly came to Qi Zong's Dharma image. Then Empress Tianhong clenched the imperial sword in her hand and swung dozens of swords in succession, and each sword was full of killing power. Even if Qi Zong burned his soul, he could only passively resist when facing the high-frequency attack of Empress Tianhong. At this time, Empress Tianhong raised her left hand. The moment she raised her hand, a clone of the imperial sword suspended in the air flew to Empress Tianhong's hand. Empress Tianhong clenched the clone of the imperial sword and slashed it with a sword. After Empress Tianhong slashed out a sword energy with the clone of the imperial sword, Empress Tianhong let go, and the clone of the imperial sword flew into the void. In this way, Empress Tianhong grabbed a clone of the imperial sword from the void while attacking and swung out a sword. Those clones of the imperial sword that swung out a sword seemed unable to bear the killing power of Empress Tianhong, and began to slowly dissipate the moment they were thrown out by Empress Tianhong. Lu Chen, who was far away, quickly understood why Empress Tianhong did this. Empress Tianhong infused too much killing power, and even the imperial sword could not withstand the killing power of Empress Tianhong. So Empress Tianhong first let the imperial sword split countless clones in the void. When Empress Tianhong attacked, she grabbed a clone of the imperial sword and swung a sword. After swiping out a sword, the clone of the imperial sword would disintegrate because it could not bear the killing power infused by Empress Tianhong. Fortunately, the clone of the imperial sword was condensed by the spiritual power of Empress Tianhong. Even if it disintegrated, it would not have any impact on the sword origin of the imperial sword. It must be said that this sword of the imperial daughter is indeed suitable for the Tianhong female emperor. When the Tianhong female emperor swung the sword energy, the evil spirit on her body changed from blood red to black, and her red skirt gradually turned black. Seeing this scene, Qi Zong's fear was constantly magnified. He could not resist the sword energy swung by the Tianhong female emperor at all. There were so many swords in the void. Qi Zong could not imagine whether he could still stand intact after the Tianhong female emperor swung all the sword energy. Qi Zong was a little unwilling. They were obviously in the same realm, and he had burned his soul. Why couldn't he resist even a sword energy swung by the Tianhong female emperor? Is the emperor who masters the power of killing really so powerful? When Qi Zong was distracted, the power of the sword energy swung by the Tianhong female emperor became more and more terrifying, and Qi Zong's golden body was full of cracks. You know, so far, the Tianhong female emperor has not shown her dharma once, and just relying on the power of her physical body, she has forced Qi Zong into a dead end. Qi Zong saw that he was no match for the Rainbow Empress even after burning his soul, and he was completely desperate. He then shouted, "The Ye family has misled me." Then, the power in his body gathered together and turned into countless bloodlines that flew into the distance. The next moment, countless cracks appeared on Qi Zong's body, and blue light emanated from the cracks. The Rainbow Empress saw at a glance that Qi Zong was planning to self-destruct his soul. The destructive energy generated by the self-destruction of a great emperor could clear out the surrounding star field, and there was basically no way for life below the great emperor. Seeing that Qi Zong was planning to self-destruct, the Rainbow Empress also realized that the battle should end. Next, the Rainbow Empress personally told Qi Zong a truth. Self-destructing in front of a great emperor who possessed the power of killing was nothing but wishful thinking. The Rainbow Empress slowly raised her hand, and all the floating emperor sword clones in the void made a buzzing sound of swords. The killing power of the Tianhong Empress was all infused into the clone holding the Empress sword, and then with a wave of her hand, all the clones of the Empress sword stabbed Qi Zong. Before Qi Zong had time to self-destruct his soul, his Dharma image was shattered by the clone of the Empress sword. The next moment, countless Empress swords carrying killing power passed through his body. After his soul was eroded by the killing power, it exploded in a very short time. Then a ball of blue fireworks appeared in the void, and the aftermath of the explosion instantly swept across the entire star field where they were. However, the explosion of Qi Zong's soul was not charged, and it was not a self-destruction of the soul, so the power was limited and did not cause much damage. The explosion on Qi Zong's side quickly attracted Qi Shi's attention. After feeling that Qi Zong's breath had completely disappeared, Qi Shi was completely panicked. He couldn't even beat Pei Tianlu, let alone the Empress who mastered the killing power. Even their ancestors have died, I'm afraid it will be his turn next. Qi Shi was unwilling to die so young. With his great emperor cultivation, he could at least live for 1,000,000 years. Qi Shi then said loudly, Lord of Daxia, I am willing to surrender and be loyal to you. Qi Shi was not sure who was the boss between Empress Tianhong and the Lord of Daxia, but now he just needed to express his idea of surrendering to them. No matter who was the boss, after listening to his words, they should consider it. After all, he was a great emperor, and he was still useful. Seeing Qi Shi proposed to be loyal to Lu Chen, Pei Tianlu frowned. From his personal standpoint, he naturally didn't want to see Qi Shi be loyal to Lu Chen. After all, the King Yun dynasty interfered in the affairs of the Red Moon dynasty and even wanted to annex the Red Moon dynasty. Although he was now a slave of Lu Chen, he still had some hatred for the King Yun dynasty in his heart. However, he also knew that Lu Chen was the master, and Lu Chen had the final say in everything. Even if he had grievances in his heart, he had to listen to Lu Chen. Pei Tianlu stopped immediately, his eyes fell on the Fiheng Xianzhou 1 light year away, waiting for Lu Chen to speak. Qi Shi's voice, with the blessing of the power of the emperor, soon reached Lu Chen's ears 1 light year away. Seeing Qi Shi proposed to be loyal to him, Lu Chen fell into deep thought. The Great Xia Dynasty will definitely expand in the future. As the Great Xia Dynasty expands, more and more enemies will be encountered. Now they are only encountering a dynasty with 3 emperors, and the strength of these 3 emperors is not very good. In the future, they may encounter a dozen emperors, or even dozens of emperors. Superpowers, at that time, the power of the Great Xia Dynasty will not be enough. One more emperor means one more strength. And he has a hunch that in the near future, there will be a battle between him and the Shanyu dynasty, that is, he and the Shanyu emperor will have a battle. End of this chapter. Chapter 1035 Boring. Lu Chen also knew that there were some conflicts between Pei Tianlu and the King Yun dynasty. If he accepted Qi Shi's allegiance, Pei Tianlu might be dissatisfied. But for the future of the Great Xia Dynasty, in order to accumulate enough power to resist Emperor Shenyu, even if it caused Pei Tianlu's dissatisfaction, it was worth absorbing Qi Shi. However, Lu Chen did not reply immediately. He separated a ray of soul, and soon a golden body of Lu Chen appeared in front of Pei Tianlu and Qi Shi. Lu Chen looked at Pei Tianlu and asked calmly, Mr. Pei, what do you think? Seeing Lu Chen personally coming with a ray of soul and asking for his opinion, Pei Tianlu knew that Lu Chen was tempted. After all, Qi Shi is a great emperor, and with a great emperor as his thug, the overall strength of the Great Xia Dynasty will rise to a higher level again in the future. As the head of the dynasty, Lu Chen is naturally willing to accept Qi Shi's allegiance. Lu Chen took the initiative to ask him just to give both parties a step down. Pei Tianlu sighed in his heart and said, Old ancestor Qi is dead and the Qi family has paid the price, so the matter between me and the Qi family can be written off. Lu Chen then looked at Qi Shi and said, Well, since Mr. Pei has said so, I will give you a chance. Let your mind go and don't resist. Hearing this, Qi Shi was stunned for a moment. He didn't know what Lu Chen was planning to do, but he had a vague feeling in his heart that it was not a good thing. But in order to save his own life, Qi Shi could only do it. He thought in his heart that as long as he could survive today, he would run away as soon as he left this star field. He was a great emperor and could not go anywhere. When the time came, the man in front of him and the empress who had the power to kill would also be able to escape. He couldn't help it. At this moment, Qi Shi suddenly felt a mark appear deep in his soul, and his soul suddenly felt a stinging pain. Just when he was thinking about getting rid of the mark, Lu Chen's voice directly sounded in his mind. Sounded. Don't resist, resistance is death. Hearing Lu Chen's words, Qi Shi immediately held on. Soon, the soul-controlling seal was planted in Qi Shi's soul by Lu Chen. After feeling the existence of the soul-controlling seal, Qi Shi's face turned pale. He did not expect that Lu Chen actually had the means to control the emperor. What is the origin of this person? Doesn't that mean that from now on he can only obey the orders of the Lord of Great Xia and become a dog of the Lord of Great Xia? Seeing Qi Shi's pale face with an expression of disbelief, Pei Tianlu felt much better. He mocked and said, Qi Shi, don't think that I don't know what you are thinking. Your Majesty has planted a soul-controlling seal. From now on, you will follow His Majesty honestly and don't try to play any tricks. Hearing Pei Tianlu's ridicule, Qi Shi came back to his senses. He glanced at Pei Tianlu coldly, and then reluctantly said to Lu Chen, Greetings, my lord. Just as Lu Chen was about to say something, a sword energy containing killing power suddenly struck. Qi Shi quickly dodged, and the sword almost hit Qi Shi's body. After Qi Shi reacted, he saw Empress Tianhong flying from a distance wearing a black and red dress with blood-red pupils. The next moment, countless clones of the Emperor's sword appeared around them. Seeing that Emperor Tianhong was about to use the move just now, Lu Chen quickly said, Hong Hong, stop quickly, he is already loyal to me. Hearing Lu Chen's reminder, Empress Tianhong woke up instantly. The blood red in her pupils slowly receded and turned into light red. Then she glanced at the people present indifferently and flew straight towards the Fiheng immortal boat. Before leaving, Empress Tianhong dropped 2 words, it's boring. Seeing Empress Tianhong leaving, Qi Shi breathed a sigh of relief. It was so dangerous, I almost lost my life. Qi Shi was extremely glad that he could surrender earlier. If he had surrendered a little later, he might have been killed by that crazy woman's sword by now. The emperor who possesses the power of killing is really terrifying. But then again, Qi Shi glanced at Empress Tianhong, who was exuding black evil aura, and then at Lu Chen's Dharma form, and he had a question in his heart. Judging from the situation just now, the crazy woman was following the orders of the Lord of Great Xia. Being able to make an emperor with the power of killing obey his orders, the identity of the Lord of Great Xia was probably more terrifying than he imagined. Thinking of this, Qi Shi hated the Ye family even more in his heart. If it weren't for the Ye family, he would not have been reduced to becoming someone else's slave. At this time, Qi Shi wished he could tear everyone in the Ye family into pieces. At this time, Pei Tianlu asked from the side, Your Majesty, are we going to the King Yun dynasty next? Upon hearing Pei Tianlu's reminder, Qi Shi's eyes immediately fell on Pei Tianlu. He stared at Pei Tianlu with hatred on his face, as if he wanted to tear him into pieces. Pei Tianlu ignored Qi Shi's gaze and continued, There is still a great emperor in the King Yun dynasty. With the luck of the dynasty, it may not be so easy to defeat him. However, if the empress can be made to take action, even with the luck of the dynasty, Qi Hongguang, nor will it be an opponent. Qi Shi originally wanted to say something, but when he thought that he was now Lu Chen's slave, it was hard for him to speak at this time. Of course he could see that Pei Tianlu wanted to kill someone with a borrowed knife, but now that he had been planted with the soul-controlling mark, his stance was on the side of Daxia. For Daxia, the destruction of the King Yun dynasty was inevitable. At this time, Qi Shi suddenly thought of something, and then said, Your Majesty, before going to King Yun dynasty, you just have to pass by the Red Moon dynasty. Now the Red Moon dynasty has no emperor. I believe that with your Majesty's means, you can easily seize the fortune of the Red Moon dynasty. Once the fortune of the Red Moon dynasty is seized, the fortune of the Great Xia Dynasty will be even stronger, and your Majesty's realm may be able to reach a higher level. Pei Tianlu snorted coldly, and then said, Qi Shi, do you think your Majesty can't see your little tricks? Qi Shi said, I am loyal to your Majesty, how dare I play tricks? What little thoughts, just telling the truth. Pei Tianlu said directly to Lu Chen, Your Majesty, since I have already pledged my loyalty to you, the Red Moon dynasty naturally belongs to your Majesty. Your Majesty can deprive the Red Moon dynasty of its luck at any time. I only hope that your Majesty can spare the lives of my descendants. Lu Chen also saw the intrigue between the two, and he said lightly, Okay, take it step by step, first go to the Red Moon Dynasty, then go to the King Yun Dynasty. He must include these two dynasties in the rule of Daxia, whether Pei Tianlu and Qi Shi say it or not. After Lu Chen finished speaking, he put away the Dharma image. Pei Tianlu glanced at Qi Shi expressionlessly, and immediately flew towards the Fiheng Xianzhou. Qi Shi originally wanted to take this opportunity to pass some news to Qi Hongguang and let him prepare, but after feeling the killing power left in the void, his mind immediately restrained. Qi Shi didn't know at this time that even if he didn't take the initiative to put away his thoughts, with the soul control seal, he couldn't pass on the news here. End of this chapter. Chapter 1036 The Ye family escapes. In the void, an old man with wounds all over his body was running away frantically, dragging his tired body and looking back from time to time. Even if no one followed him, Ye Hongyun still did not relax his vigilance. He had seen the woman's methods. The last time they ran away, the crazy woman suddenly appeared in front of them. If Qi Zong and Qi Shi had not held her back, she might appear on his way to escape and block his way the next moment. When he thought of the woman in a red dress with a monstrous murderous aura, he was extremely frightened. At this time, Ye Hongyun was somewhat fortunate that he had the magical power of exchanging wealth and life. If it were not for this magical power, he would probably have fallen now. While running away, Ye Hongyun said to himself, "Ancestor Qi, don't blame me. I didn't expect that there would be such a killing god hidden here, and I also paid a painful price." When Ye Hongyun thought of using the magical power of exchanging wealth and life, he felt pain in his heart. The so-called exchange of wealth and life means that no matter what kind of dangerous situation he is in, as long as he sacrifices all his wealth and money in his life, he can escape from danger instantly, even if the other party is the 9th level of the Great Emperor, he cannot stop him. This magical power of escaping is indeed very powerful. But he uses business to prove the Tao, and wealth is very important to him. Once the life-saving magical power of exchanging wealth and life is used, he will never be able to keep wealth in the future, his Tao will end here, and his strength will be difficult to improve. However, Ye Hongyun does not regret it at all now. Although it is difficult to improve his strength, he has survived. Soon Ye Hongyun returned to the Red Moon Dynasty. After returning to the Red Moon Dynasty, he immediately summoned all the core members of the Ye family and took them away from the Red Moon Dynasty. Ye Hongyun did not even tell the Ye family why he wanted to leave the Red Moon Dynasty, but when the Ye family saw that their ancestor was so panicked and covered with injuries, they basically guessed that their attack on the Great Xia Dynasty failed, and it was likely that they had hit a wall. The news of the Ye family's relocation soon reached the ears of Pei Wenfu, the current Moon Emperor of the Red Moon Dynasty. Red Moon Dynasty, the palace. Pei Wenfu sat in the hall and glanced at the officials in the hall, who can tell me why the Ye family would move away from the Red Moon Dynasty at this time? Hearing Pei Wenfu's question, the ministers in the hall looked at each other, they didn't hear anything. Now the Red Moon Dynasty is only a subsidiary dynasty of the King Yun Dynasty. Even if the King Yun Dynasty passes through the Red Moon Dynasty, it will not notify the Red Moon Dynasty. In addition, Pei Wenfu is now addicted to wine and meat, and he is not so concerned about the affairs of the Red Moon Dynasty, so he knows nothing about the Ye family and the King Yun Dynasty jointly attacking the Great Xia Dynasty. But Pei Wenfu is not a fool. The Ye family has been in the Red Moon Dynasty for many years. Even before the Red Moon Dynasty was founded, the Ye family already existed. How could they just move away? The Ye family must have encountered some trouble. Pei Wenfu is now afraid that the trouble the Ye family encountered will also be his trouble. Seeing that no one in the hall answered his question, Pei Wenfu roared angrily. "Investigate, investigate for me. I want to see what the Ye family is doing." At this time, an official suddenly stood up and said, "Your Majesty, a few days ago, a member of the Ye family told me a piece of news. I don't know if this is related to the relocation of the Ye family." Pei Wenfu hurriedly said, "Speak." The minister immediately said, the person from the Ye family told me that they want to unite with other dynasties to attack the Great Xia Dynasty. If they can take down the Great Xia Dynasty, the manufacturing methods of those starships will belong to their Ye family in the future. Hearing the minister's words, Pei Wenfu fell into deep thought. After a while, Pei Wenfu's face became extremely gloomy. The Ye family went to attack the Great Xia Dynasty, and finally the Ye family moved away. What does this mean? This means that the Ye family has hit a wall and the whole family has run away. The Ye family is a family of the Red Moon Dynasty. Although the Ye family rarely interferes in the political affairs of the Red Moon Dynasty, the Ye family has always existed in the Red Moon Dynasty. Perhaps in the eyes of the Ye family's enemies, the Red Moon Dynasty is the backer behind the Ye family. Now that the Ye family has been defeated and fled, will the enemies of the Ye family come to blame the Red Moon Dynasty for everything the Ye family has done? If so, the Red Moon Dynasty will face a crisis again, and its throne will also be in jeopardy. Thinking of this, Pei Wenfu said to the eunuch in the hall without hesitation, "Quick, announce the envoy of the King Yun Dynasty." A quarter of an hour later. The palace, in the Imperial Garden. Pei Wenfu sat on a stone bench in the Imperial Garden, feeling uneasy. He didn't want to lose the throne that he had finally secured because of the bad things done by the Ye family. No matter who or what force the Ye family offended, he believed that as long as he found the King Yun Dynasty, everything would be solved. After all, the King Yun Dynasty had 3 emperors, and there should be no dynasty with 3 emperors in the nearby star field. As long as the King Yun Dynasty said a word, the force that the Ye family offended should not come to the door. Obviously, Pei Wenfu's idea this time was going to fail, and he was not always so lucky to find helpers. After an unknown amount of time, a feminine voice appeared in the pavilion. "Your Majesty is so anxious, I wonder what it is for." A man in a purple dress suddenly appeared and leaned against the pillar of the pavilion. After Feng Tengfei came to the Red Moon Dynasty, this was the first time he saw Pei Wenfu looking for him in such a panic. He sent 10 people here within a quarter of an hour. Even when Pei Wenfu was trying to stabilize his throne, he had never been so panicked. When Pei Wenfu saw Feng Tengfei coming, he relaxed a little. He said directly, "The Ye family has moved away. I heard that they united with a certain dynasty not long ago to attack the Great Xia Dynasty. Now they have moved away. I'm afraid I've hit a brick wall. I am worried that the Great Xia Dynasty will come to attack the Qiyu Dynasty, and I would like to trouble Envoy Feng to tell Emperor Yun the news as soon as possible." Hearing Pei Wenfu's words, Feng Tengfei was stunned. His expression immediately became extremely serious. "What did your Majesty say?" "The Ye family moved away from the Red Moon Dynasty. He has been in seclusion recently, so he doesn't know much about the outside world, but he has heard about the Ye family's plan to unite with the King Yun Dynasty to attack the Xia Dynasty a long time ago. Now that the Ye family has run away, doesn't it mean that the Ye family and the King Yun Dynasty have never defeated the Xia Dynasty together?" Pei Wenfu said, "Yes, and they left in a hurry and didn't take away many things." After receiving a positive reply from Pei Wenfu, Feng Tengfei did not hesitate at all and said directly to Pei Wenfu, "Your Majesty, I have something else to do, so I will leave first. I will come find you when there is any news." After the words fell, Feng Tengfei's body disappeared on the spot. Seeing Feng Tengfei so panicked after hearing about the Ye family, Pei Wenfu immediately had a bad feeling. End of chapter. Chapter 1037, Panic Pei Wenfu. After leaving the palace of the Qiyu Dynasty, Feng Tengfei returned to the secret room where he practiced. Then he took out the token of Emperor Yun Qihongguang and contacted Qihongguang directly through the token. In a moment, Qihongguang's projection appeared in the secret room. Seeing that it was Feng Tengfei, Qihongguang was a little curious. He was the one who photographed Feng Tengfei going to the Red Moon Dynasty to spy on Pei Wenfu. Now that the Red Moon Dynasty has been completely controlled by the King Yun Dynasty, logically there should be nothing wrong. What does Feng Tengfei want to do with him? Qihongguang asked, What's the matter? Feng Tengfei said quickly, Your Majesty, Pei Wenfu just told his subordinates that the Ye family moved away from the Xia Dynasty, and they left in a hurry. Qi Hongguang was stunned when he heard the news reported by Feng Tengfei. The Ye family and the King Yun dynasty jointly attacked the Xia Dynasty. Their ancestors from the King Yun dynasty had not sent back any news, and the Ye family ran away. What does this mean? It means something may have happened. Qi Hongguang couldn't believe it. Those were 3 great emperors. Even if their ancestors' guess was wrong, the Great Xia Dynasty really had 2 great emperors. 3 against 2, the probability of winning was very high. Even if the 3 great emperors are no match for the Great Xia Dynasty, with the cultivation of their great emperors, it should not be difficult to escape from the battlefield and spread the news. Why did the Ye family make such an unusual move without even receiving the news? If they really encountered any danger and even their ancestors couldn't spread the news, then with Ye Hongyun's strength, it would be even more difficult to spread the news. What happened that made the Ye family decide to move away from the Xia Dynasty? No, we must find out the reason for this. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Then Qi Hongguang said to Feng Tengfei, Catch up with the Ye family immediately and find out why they want to move away from the Red Moon Dynasty. Feng Tengfei said, Yes, Your Majesty. As soon as Feng Tengfei finished speaking, Qi Hongguang's projection itself dissipated instantly. After Qi Hongguang came to his senses, he immediately sent someone to the Xia Dynasty to inquire about the situation. Qi Hongguang spent the next few days in anxiety. If even the 3 great emperors are no match for the Great Xia Dynasty, and their ancestors did not send any news until the end, it means that the strength of the great emperors of the Great Xia Dynasty has far surpassed their ancestors. If the Great Xia Dynasty came to attack, he might not be able to resist it even with his own strength. Qi Hongguang was a little unwilling to believe the results he had expected. How could an overly powerful emperor appear in the edge star field of the universe? As long as the emperor's strength reaches a certain level, he will either go to the central star field or the outer field, and will not hide in such edge star fields. Qi Hongguang comforted himself in his heart. Maybe the Ye family's move away from the Xia Dynasty was just an order given by the ancestor of the Ye family before leaving. Qi Hongguang knew very well in his heart that it was impossible for Ye Hongyun to issue such an order to relocate the entire family when he was attacking the Great Xia Dynasty, unless something happened, but Qi Hongguang didn't want to believe that something really happened to them. At the same time, in the void, more than a dozen immortal boats were flying towards the distance at the fastest speed. On the ferry boat, people looked very confused, even though the Ye family had already guessed what might have happened in the attack on the Xia Dynasty. But they still couldn't figure out how something could happen if 3 great emperors attacked a dynasty that seemed to have only 2 great emperors, and even caused their ancestors to move away as a family. The Ye family has taken root in the Scarlet Moon Dynasty for who knows how many years, and even the Ye family has a longer history than the Scarlet Moon Dynasty. Ye Hongyun stood on the deck of the ferry boat, his face full of melancholy. At this time, a descendant of the Ye family came to Ye Hongyun and asked, Ancestor, what happened? Why are we in such a hurry to leave the Xia Dynasty? Ye Hongyun sighed deeply. The Great Xia Dynasty has an emperor who proves his way through killing. Upon hearing these words, all the Ye family disciples present were stunned on the spot. Just these words from Ye Hongyun were enough for them to understand why Ye Hongyun was in such a mess when he came back. No wonder their ancestors moved their entire family without saying a word when they came back, offending a great emperor who used killing to prove the Tao. If they didn't run away quickly, I'm afraid the Ye family would all be slaughtered in a short time. How could an emperor with the power of killing hide in such a remote star field? Their luck is too bad. For a time, a depressive atmosphere filled the entire ferry boat. After a while, a Ye family disciple asked, Ancestor, where should we go next? Ye Hongyun glanced at the children of the Ye family present, and was about to say something. Suddenly, a person shouted, Look, what is that? Upon hearing this, Ye Hongyun immediately looked in the direction that the man was pointing, and saw some blood-red filaments appearing in the void. Feeling the power of the curse contained in those blood-red filaments, Ye Hongyun's expression changed drastically. No, this is the power of the curse. He immediately left the ferry boat and showed his Dharma appearance, intending to resist the power of the curse, but soon the blood-red filaments flew into the bodies of the Ye family. Some Ye family members couldn't bear the power of the curse and exploded to death. Seeing this scene, Ye Hongyun's eyes also turned scarlet. Through the breath of power, he instantly understood who had placed the curse on the Ye family. Seeing the children of the Ye family dying in front of him, Ye Hongyun shouted loudly. Qi Zone! Ye Hongyun used all his strength and finally blocked a small part of the curse power. When Ye Hongyun's eyes fell on the children of the Ye family, he found that most of the Ye family members had a red mark on their foreheads. Ye Hongyun grabbed a person's hand and checked the person's body, intending to use spiritual power to dispel the curse. But soon he found that the curse had penetrated into the soul, and even if he was a great emperor, it would be difficult to completely remove the curse. Seeing the painful appearance of the children of the Ye family, Ye Hongyun was furious, but he had no way to vent this anger. From the strength of the curse power, it can be seen that Qi Zone should have exhausted all his strength. At this time, Qi Zone was probably killed by the crazy woman, and he couldn't find anyone to take revenge. Is it just like this? Ye Hongyun clenched his dry palms, but after a while, his fists slowly loosened again. Full of anger, in the end, it just turned into a long sigh. The culprit is dead, and he can't afford to offend the crazy woman who has the power of killing. The most urgent thing is to find a new place for the Ye family. Thinking of this, Ye Hongyun then helped the children of the Ye family to suppress the curse for a short time, and then led the Ye family to continue to move towards the depths of the universe. Red Moon Dynasty, Palace. Pei Wenfu walked around in the hall. Some time has passed, but there is no news from Feng Tengfei. The last time he saw Feng Tengfei's anxious look, he realized that something big might happen, but so many days have passed, and the King Yun dynasty has not sent anyone. Pei Wenfu said to himself, the Ye family must have heard some rumors, and there must be enemies coming to the door. Pei Wenfu became more and more panicked as he thought about it, and then he said to the guards at the door, tell the envoy that I have something to find him. Pei Wenfu planned to continue to ask Feng Tengfei about the Ye family. Feng Tengfei was so anxious when he left, so he must know something inside. End of this chapter. Chapter 1038 The Great Xia Dynasty marches. As soon as Pei Wenfu asked the guards to summon Feng Tengfei, a guard rushed into the hall in a panic. Your Majesty, something serious has happened. Seeing the panicked expression on the guard's face, Pei Wenfu felt alarmed, and he quickly asked, tell me, what happened? The guard replied, a large number of immortal boats appeared in the Baiyun Star territory. Hearing this, Pei Wenfu's face suddenly turned pale. It's over. The Ye family has indeed provoked a powerful enemy. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network. Pei Wenfu quickly realized that this enemy was probably coming for the Ye family and had nothing to do with the Xia dynasty. If he lowered his attitude, could he survive this crisis? Moreover, there is the King Yun dynasty standing behind him. Even if the enemies of the Ye family really want to use the Ye family as an excuse to attack the Xia dynasty, they have to ask whether the King Yun dynasty agrees. Thinking of this, Pei Wenfu personally went to Feng Tengfei's mansion, intending to ask Feng Tengfei to ask for help from the King Yun dynasty. After Pei Wenfu arrived at Feng Tengfei's residence, he immediately said to the servants at Feng Tengfei's residence, where is Envoy Feng? I have something to do with Envoy Feng. The servant replied, Your Majesty, Ambassador Feng has left the imperial capital. Hearing the servant's answer, Pei Wenfu suddenly felt that the sky was falling. Feng Tengfei had always left, but he left at this time. Without Feng Tengfei, how could he get in touch with the King Yun dynasty? Pei Wenfu quickly asked, Did Ambassador Feng leave anything behind when he left? The servant thought for a moment and then said, Envoy Feng said he will be back soon. Pei Wenfu fell into deep thought. Could it be that Feng Tengfei already knew what was about to happen to the Xia Dynasty? Just when Pei Wenfu was stunned, one of Pei Wenfu's personal guards came to Pei Wenfu and said, Your Majesty, something bad has happened. The Great Xia Dynasty has launched an attack on us. Several star regions around the Baiyun Star region have been destroyed by Great Xia, occupied by imperial troops. Pei Wenfu was startled. It was too fast. How could it be so fast? After he came to his senses, he asked, how many great emperors did the Great Xia Dynasty have? In Pei Wenfu's view, if the Great Xia Dynasty was able to capture the Baiyun Star territory and the surrounding star territories in such a short period of time, then the Great Xia Dynasty must have taken the initiative. Without the Great Emperor, with the strength of those quasi-emperors near the Baiyun Star territory, they should be able to hold off for some time. However, the personal guard replied at this time, Back to your Majesty, the Great Xia Dynasty did not take the initiative. Pei Wenfu was stunned when he heard the guard's answer. The Great Xia Dynasty hadn't even dispatched the Emperor, but how many star regions had the Scarlet Moon Dynasty lost? Is the Great Xia Dynasty so powerful? He remembered that the intelligence he had read before said that the Great Xia Dynasty was just a new dynasty. How could a rising dynasty be so powerful without an active emperor? Seeing Pei Wenfu's gloomy face, the guard hesitated to speak. Pei Wenfu's eyes were fixed on the face of the guard who was reporting the battle report. Seeing that the guard looked like he wanted to say something else, Pei Wenfu said coldly, If there is any more bad news, tell me. The guard stammered, According to the information we gathered, the territory lords and realm lords of those star regions did not resist at all, and just surrendered directly. Pei Wenfu was stunned for a moment, then became furious, and his gloomy face turned red. Traitors, they are all a bunch of traitors. He said, how could the Great Xia Dynasty advance so fast without the initiative of the Emperor? It turned out that their own people surrendered directly. Pei Wenfu roared, I give them autonomy and let them do whatever they want in their own star domain. Why do they have any dissatisfaction? They actually betray me at this time. Pei Wenfu pulled out his sword and slashed at things in Feng Tengfei's yard. But at this moment, a serious voice came, who made His Majesty so angry. When he heard the coming voice, Pei Wenfu immediately stopped what he was doing and turned his head to look in the direction of the sound. Seeing that Feng Tengfei was back, Pei Wenfu felt as if he had seen a life-saving straw. He quickly walked up and said, Envoy Feng, you are finally back. I thought your King Yun dynasty was planning to abandon the Xia dynasty. Feng Tengfei said, What are you saying, Your Majesty? Since the Scarlet Moon dynasty is already a subsidiary dynasty of the King Yun dynasty, no matter what happens to the Scarlet Moon dynasty, the King Yun dynasty will help. Your Majesty, tell me, what happened while I was away? Pei Wenfu replied, the Great Xia dynasty led troops to attack the Scarlet Moon dynasty, and has occupied the Baiyun Star territory and several nearby star territories, and should be heading towards the Emperor Star now. Feng Tengfei was stunned, and his original serious expression became more solemn. Did the Great Xia dynasty come over so quickly? Then Feng Tengfei said to Pei Wenfu, Your Majesty, I have something to report to His Majesty the Emperor Yun. If there is anything else, we will discuss it later. At this point, Feng Tengfei's body disappeared on the spot, and soon he came to the secret room where he was retreating. Entering the secret room, he activated Qi Hongguang's token. The moment Qi Hongguang's projection appeared in the secret room, Feng Tengfei immediately said, Your Majesty, the Great Xia dynasty suddenly launched an attack on the Scarlet Moon dynasty and has now occupied several star regions under the Scarlet Moon dynasty. Like Feng Tengfei, Qi Hongguang was stunned when he heard the news. But he quickly came to his senses and asked, Have you found out the reason why the Ye family moved away? Feng Tengfei knelt down and said, Your Majesty, Please forgive me. I have rushed to the direction where the Ye family moved away as fast as possible, but I did not find any trace of the Ye family along the way. I was worried that something would happen to the Red Moon Dynasty if I left for too long, so I asked my clone to continue looking for the Ye family, and my main body returned to the Red Moon Dynasty. Qi Hongguang did not blame Feng Tengfei. After all, the Ye family was an old family with some means of hiding their traces. It was normal that Feng Tengfei could not find the Ye family's ferry boat. Qi Hongguang did not expect Feng Tengfei to find out the reason why the Ye family moved away. Anyway, the people he sent out to find out the information were expected to come back soon, and he would soon know the information about their royal ancestor. But even if the people he sent out did not come back, he realized that his ancestor was in danger. Originally, the Ye family joined forces with the King Yun dynasty to attack the Great Xia Dynasty, but now their ancestors have lost contact, and the Ye family has fled again. Now the army of the Great Xia Dynasty has gone to attack the Red Moon Dynasty. It is obvious that their ancestors have been defeated, otherwise how could the Great Xia Dynasty have the spare energy to attack the Red Moon Dynasty at this time? Qi Hongguang was silent for a moment. After the secret room became quiet, Feng Tengfei suddenly felt the temperature of the secret room drop suddenly, and the whole person was sweating. After a while, Qi Hongguang said, "Forget it, you can come back." Feng Tengfei hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, what should we do with the Moon Emperor?" Qi Hongguang said expressionlessly, "Let him fend for himself. If his guess is right, then the King Yun dynasty itself can hardly protect itself, so how can it care about the Red Moon dynasty? Since the Great Xia dynasty wants to attack the King Yun dynasty first, it is just right that the King Yun dynasty can take advantage of the time when the Great Xia dynasty attacks the Red Moon dynasty to make adequate preparations. With the blessing of the dynasty's fortune, no matter how powerful the Great Xia dynasty is, he is not completely powerless to resist." Chapter 1039, The Red Moon Dynasty Wants to Negotiate Peace. Pei Wenfu was completely unaware that he had been abandoned. Feng Tengfei left the Red Moon Dynasty immediately after receiving Qi Hongguang's order, and did not even tell Pei Wenfu that he had left. Pei Wenfu was still waiting in the yard. However, as time went to the evening, Pei Wenfu found that Feng Tengfei had not come out yet. He was a little panicked. He hurriedly said to the servants in Feng Tengfei's mansion, "Where is Envoy Feng? Why hasn't he come out yet? Go and see what Envoy Feng is doing." Pei Wenfu had already noticed something wrong. Feng Tengfei was just reporting some things to Emperor Yun. How could it take so long? After hearing Pei Wenfu's order, the servants in Feng Tengfei's mansion did not do as he said. After all, Feng Tengfei was the envoy of the King Yun dynasty. Even the Emperor Pei Wenfu did not dare to disturb him casually. How could they dare to disturb Pei Wenfu? Seeing the servants standing there motionless, Pei Wenfu was immediately furious. "Why, after you became the servants of Feng Shangxi, you are not afraid of me? You don't listen to my words." The servants knelt down hurriedly after hearing this, but still no one went to find Feng Tengfei. Seeing the servants' scared look, Pei Wenfu was furious. In addition, these servants served Feng Tengfei, so he really didn't dare to do anything to them. Pei Wenfu snorted coldly and didn't embarrass these servants anymore. He walked directly to the lobby of Feng Tengfei's mansion and shouted loudly, "Envoy Feng, are you still there? Envoy Feng!" Pei Wenfu became more and more panicked. Feng Tengfei was a saint. It was reasonable that he could hear him calling him in the palace. How could he not respond after so long? Then Pei Wenfu said to his guards, "Send someone to find Feng Shangxi immediately." "Yes, Your Majesty." Then, Pei Wenfu and his guards searched for Feng Tengfei in Feng Tengfei's mansion. As a result, they searched the entire mansion, but still did not see Feng Tengfei. They even searched the secret room where Feng Tengfei was in seclusion, but still could not find Feng Tengfei. In the dead of night, Pei Wenfu stood at the door of Feng Tengfei's seclusion room with a gloomy face. He had realized that the King Yun dynasty had abandoned the Red Moon dynasty. Pei Wenfu said with resentment, "Damn it, the surname Feng must have escaped. No, I can't sit and wait for death. Since the King Yun dynasty is now unreliable, he can only rely on himself." Pei Wenfu then turned his head and said to the guards around him, "Call all ministers immediately." Pei Wenfu thought that it was nothing more than changing the object of loyalty. As long as he was sincere enough, he believed that the Great Xia Dynasty would accept his loyalty like the King Yun Dynasty. After all, it is not an easy task to deprive a dynasty of its complete luck. The luck of a dynasty is closely related to its people. If it is not recognized by most of the people in the dynasty, the luck it can obtain will be greatly reduced. This is why the King Yun Dynasty did not destroy the Red Moon Dynasty in the first place. As long as there are diehards in the Red Moon Dynasty and people who are unwilling to surrender, other dynasties will not be able to completely strip away the luck of the Red Moon Dynasty. The King Yun Dynasty allowed Pei Wenfu to continue to be the emperor in order to make him a tyrant, so that the people of the Red Moon Dynasty would be disappointed in him and completely lose their sense of belonging to the Red Moon Dynasty. In this way, the luck of the Red Moon Dynasty can be easily completely stripped away by the King Yun Dynasty. Pei Wenfu also knew that the people's hearts were the key to the luck of the dynasty. He believed that if he could help the Great Xia Dynasty turn the people's hearts of the Red Moon Dynasty to the Great Xia Dynasty, then the Great Xia Dynasty should support him as a puppet emperor. As for what would happen to his descendants, this was not something he considered. As long as he was still the emperor while he was alive, it would be fine. Late at night, Xianzheng Hall. In the hall, the ministers were whispering to each other. Most of them already knew why Pei Wenfu asked them to attend the court so late. The Great Xia Dynasty had taken over several star regions in such a short time. Pei Wenfu couldn't help but panic. Soon, the eunuch's voice came, "Your Majesty is here." The hall was instantly quiet, and everyone's eyes fell on the dragon throne. After Pei Wenfu came from the side hall and sat in front of the dragon throne, he immediately said, "My dear ministers, I summoned you late at night because the Red Moon Dynasty has reached a critical moment of life and death. I believe that some of you have heard about the Baiun Star region." At this time, a minister who didn't know what happened in the Baiun Star region asked, "Your Majesty, I don't know what happened in the Baiun Star region." Pei Wenfu said, "The Ye family angered the Great Xia Dynasty, which led to the Great Xia Dynasty attacking the Red Moon Dynasty. Now the Great Xia army has occupied the Baiun Star region and its nearby star regions." As soon as Pei Wenfu finished speaking, the hall was instantly in chaos. What? The Baiun Star region was lost? How could it be so fast? There are at least 10 quasi-emperors near the Baiun Star region, why did it fall so quickly? Could it be that an emperor from the Great Xia Dynasty took action? What should we do now? Seeing the chaos in the hall, Pei Wenfu was about to say something, but a minister stood up and said, "Your Majesty, tell Envoy Feng about this immediately and ask the King Yun Dynasty to send an emperor. Otherwise, with our strength, I'm afraid it will be difficult to resist the power of the emperor." Pei Wenfu glanced at the person who was speaking, and then said expressionlessly, "I have told Feng Tengfei the news as soon as possible, but after hearing the news, he immediately left the Red Moon Dynasty and is now missing." As soon as these words came out, the whole hall fell silent. Feng Tengfei was sent by the King Yun Dynasty to monitor the royal family of the Red Moon Dynasty. Now that Feng Tengfei heard that the Great Xia Dynasty was attacking the Red Moon Dynasty, he not only did not help the Red Moon Dynasty, but ran away directly. What does this mean? It means that Feng Tengfei may know some information about the Great Xia Dynasty, and the strength of the Great Xia Dynasty is so strong that even the King Yun Dynasty dare not provoke it, otherwise how could Feng Tengfei, as an envoy of the King Yun Dynasty, run so fast? For a while, the whole hall was dead silent. The Ye family had fled a long time ago. Now that the Ye family is gone, the Great Xia Dynasty will definitely vent its anger on the Red Moon Dynasty. The fact that the Great Xia Dynasty was able to occupy the Biun Star region and the nearby star regions in such a short time proves that the Great Xia Dynasty is strong enough to defeat the entire Red Moon Dynasty. Pei Wenfu saw that the ministers were silent, so he asked, "I wonder if you have any way to resolve this crisis?" At this time, the minister who spoke earlier said, "Your Majesty, since this incident was caused by the Ye family, and the Ye family has already fled the Red Moon Dynasty, it naturally has nothing to do with us. Why don't we take the initiative to propose peace talks and apologize to the Great Xia Dynasty? I believe that as long as our sincerity is enough, the Great Xia Dynasty will agree to peace talks." As soon as these words came out, a grey-haired old man snorted and said, "Peace talks? Ridiculous! Li Zhenshao, why don't you just say that you will be a dog for the Great Xia Dynasty?" Chapter 1040 Is it really you? Are you still alive? Hearing the strange voice of the old man in the hall, Pei Wenfu's face darkened instantly. Remember the domain name of this website, Taiwan Novel Network. How could he not hear that this old guy was Yin and Yang himself? Pei Wenfu glanced at the old man, and then asked coldly, "I wonder if Pei Iking has any good solutions?" Pei Nian said without changing his expression, "The Great Xia Dynasty is coming fiercely. It has occupied the Biun Star territory in such a short period of time. It is obvious that it is aiming to destroy the country. Even if His Majesty proposes peace, the other party is unlikely to agree. We should give up our illusions and not think about compromising again like we did when we surrendered to the King Yun dynasty." Pei Nian was from Pei Shihua's faction and also belonged to the clan. After Pei Shihua failed to usurp the throne, Pei Wenfu cleared out a large number of people related to Pei Shihua, but some were still left. Most of the clans are on Pei Shihua's side. If they were all cleared out, there would be no one left in the clan. It is precisely because Pei Wenfu left some clan members behind, and these clan members would jump out from time to time to dislike Pei Wenfu, which made Pei Wenfu very angry. He had killed countless people from the clan, but people kept coming out to hate him. He didn't understand how these people could be so unafraid of death. Seeing that Pei Wenfu's face was extremely gloomy, the guard who had been criticized by Pei Nian quickly said, "Pei Nian, what do you mean by this? You are questioning His Majesty's authority. If His Majesty hadn't been merciful and let you go, you would have died long ago, and it would be your turn to talk nonsense here. You also know that Daxia is powerful, but you still want the Scarlet Moon Dynasty and Daxia Dynasty to have a head-to-head confrontation. What are your intentions?" At this point, the guard looked at Pei Wenfu on the dragon throne and bowed his head and said, "Your Majesty, Pei Nian has ulterior motives. I sincerely request Your Majesty to investigate Pei Nian strictly." After the guard envoy finished speaking, many ministers in the hall also echoed, "I beg Your Majesty to investigate Pei Nian strictly." Pei Nian looked at the guardian indifferently, not taking his impeachment to heart at all. Pei Wenfu glanced at Pei Nian and said expressionlessly, "Pei Iking, your end is approaching, so you should stay at home and take care of yourself. You don't need to worry about state affairs." Upon hearing this, Pei Nian didn't bother and said directly, "Thank you for your grace, I will retire." As soon as he finished speaking, Pei Nian turned around and left the hall. Seeing that Pei Nian, a hardliner, had already left, the remaining ministers naturally understood what their Majesty was thinking. Soon Pei Wenfu reached a consensus with the ministers, and the Qiyu dynasty bowed its head to the Great Xia Dynasty. After the court meeting, some members of the clan came to Pei Nian's mansion. A member of the clan asked with a bitter look on his face, "Uncle, what should we do now? Your Majesty has already planned to surrender to the Great Xia Dynasty. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that the Great Xia Dynasty wanted to destroy the Qiyu dynasty, but in the end, that foolish king actually wanted to betray the country and seek glory." Pei Nian sighed deeply, "The decision he makes is something we can control. He knows better than anyone else what the Great Xia Dynasty is going to do. The so-called peace talks are just an attempt to use the dynasty's energy as a bargaining chip to stabilize his throne. A member of the clan said, "Once your majesty really surrenders to the Great Xia Dynasty, the people of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty will completely lose their support. Your majesty's actions will only accelerate the demise of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty." As members of the clan, they can all feel that the strength of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty is rapidly passing away. The people of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty are becoming more and more disappointed with the Scarlet Moon Dynasty and the royal family. Once disappointment turns to despair and the Scarlet Moon Dynasty completely loses the support of the people, the Scarlet Moon Dynasty's luck will be easily deprived by other dynasties. Without the dynasty's luck, the Scarlet Moon Dynasty will also die. Although they also knew that it would be difficult for a dynasty without a great emperor to withstand an attack by a force with a great emperor, they did not want to see the Xia dynasty perish like this. Even if there is still a last glimmer of hope, they are willing to try. As a clan, their destiny is bound to the destiny of the dynasty. Once the Xia dynasty is destroyed and the dynasty's luck is gone, their luck will quickly dissipate. Without their luck, even if the Pei family survives, life will become increasingly difficult in the future. This is also the reason why after most dynasties were destroyed, their descendants did not end well. Pei Nian thought for a moment and then said, "No, your majesty cannot succeed no matter what. I have to go to the front line in person to resist the invasion of Daxia." Since Pei Wenfu does not dare to go to war with the Great Xia dynasty, then their clan will personally come forward. No matter what, they can no longer surrender to other dynasties. They must unite the hearts of the people of the Red Moon Dynasty and stabilize the destiny of the Red Moon Dynasty. Pei Nian thought to himself that he had no chance to break through to the realm of the Great Emperor in this life anyway. The deadline was approaching, and even if he died, he would die on the battlefield. In recent years, Pei Wenfu had the King Yun dynasty behind him, so he did not dare to openly confront Pei Wenfu. But now that even Feng Tengfei has run away, the King Yun dynasty obviously cannot afford to offend the Great Xia dynasty, and there is no one behind Pei Wenfu. In this case, he is still afraid of what Pei Wenfu, a little saint, will do. Then Pei Nian gathered a large number of people from the clan and led troops to the front line overnight. They also knew that they would most likely not be the opponent of the Great Xia dynasty, but they could not let Pei Wenfu's plan succeed, and it would not matter even if they died. As long as these royal family members appear on the battlefield, they can be seen by the common people of the Red Moon Dynasty and those who are loyal to the Red Moon Dynasty, and the people's hearts of the Red Moon Dynasty will not be completely lost. As long as the people's hearts are still there, the dynasty's fortune is still there, and their descendants will still be blessed by the dynasty's fortune. At the same time, Baiyun Star Region, Fiheng Xianzhou floated quietly above the Fenghai world. On the deck of the Xianzhou, Lu Chen glanced at the dozen quasi-emperors in front of him, and then asked with a smile, "You dare to betray the Red Moon Dynasty, aren't you afraid that the Moon Emperor will let the King Yun Dynasty settle accounts with you?" A quasi-emperor said, "There is nothing to be afraid of. Since Pei Wenfu, the lord of the dynasty, can surrender to other dynasties, then we can naturally do so. Your choice is very wise. I accept your loyalty. It just so happens that I have someone I want you to meet." At this point, Lu Chen said to the side, "Mr. Pei, you can come out." After Lu Chen finished speaking, Pei Tianlu's figure slowly appeared. Seeing that it was Pei Tianlu, the quasi-emperors present were stunned on the spot. Many of them were trained by Pei Tianlu. After Pei Shuhua failed to seize power, Pei Wenfu drove them to the edge of the star field of the Red Moon Dynasty. They all thought that Pei Tianlu was dead, but they didn't expect to see Pei Tianlu again at this time. Moreover, the death aura on Pei Tianlu's body had dissipated, and it was obvious that he had survived the death. A quasi-emperor asked in disbelief, "Your Majesty? Your Majesty, is it really you? Are you still alive?" Seeing these quasi-emperors, Pei Tianlu felt a little complicated. After all, many of them were trained by him, but now they betrayed the Red Moon Dynasty. But then again, even he himself betrayed the Red Moon Dynasty, so what reason did he have to blame these people? Pei Tianlu sighed and said, I'm sorry for you, and the Red Moon Dynasty is sorry for you. Chapter 1041 Why does this image look so much like the image of the ancestor? As soon as Pei Tianlu finished speaking, a quasi-emperor said quickly, Your Majesty, what are you talking about? It's because we are sorry for your Majesty. We failed to protect the Xia Dynasty and instead surrendered to the enemy. Pei Tianlu said, I am now loyal to His Majesty the Emperor of Heaven and am no longer your Majesty. Please don't call me that again in the future. Everyone's eyes fell on Lu Chen. They knew that the person in front of them was a great emperor, but they were a little confused. With Pei Tianlu's strength, how could he be willing to be loyal to this young emperor? Pei Tianlu continued at this time, it's not your fault. After all, it was the Xia Dynasty that's sorry for you first, and the Great Xia Dynasty cannot be considered your enemy. Everyone thought about it and felt that it made sense. The founders of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty were all loyal to the head of the Great Xia Dynasty. As followers of Pei Tianlu, there seemed to be nothing wrong with them taking the initiative to be loyal to the Emperor of Great Xia. At this time, the dozen or so quasi-emperors all said to Lu Chen, We will pay homage to His Majesty the Emperor of Heaven. Lu Chen said, Everyone, get up. Thank you, Your Majesty. These quasi-emperors bowed like this, which meant that they officially left the Scarlet Moon Dynasty and joined the Great Xia Dynasty. At this time, a quasi-emperor said, Your Majesty, the Ye family moved away from the Xia Dynasty a few days ago. I wonder if this matter is related to the Xia Dynasty. Pei Tianlu answered for Lu Chen, the Ye family and the King Yun Dynasty jointly attacked the Xia Dynasty. After the King Yun Dynasty was defeated, the ancestor of the Ye family used a secret method to escape from the battlefield. Hearing Pei Tianlu's answer, the quasi-emperors present were very surprised. An unknown emerging dynasty actually defeated the Ye family and the King Yun Dynasty. No wonder the King Yun Dynasty never sent anyone to the front line to help the Xia Dynasty. It seems that this emperor is more powerful than they imagined. Also, how could an ordinary person be able to make Pei Tianlu willingly loyal to him? Lu Chen said at this time, Okay, we should hurry up. The Scarlet Moon Dynasty didn't even have an emperor, so Lu Chen didn't plan to waste too much time here. After defeating the Scarlet Moon Dynasty as soon as possible, he could go to the King Yun Dynasty. Lu Chen and his fleet then continued to move towards the Emperor Star of the Xia Dynasty. 1 month later. Xia Dynasty, Royal Palace. In the Imperial Study Room. Pei Wenfu looked extremely solemn as he looked at the battle reports sent from various star regions recently. In just 1 month, most of the star territory under the rule of the Xia Dynasty fell into the hands of the Xia Dynasty army. Pei Wenfu felt something was wrong. He remembered that many star territory lords firmly supported the Scarlet Moon Dynasty. However, judging from the intelligence collected, most of the star territory lords did not offer any resistance and chose to directly surrender. This made Pei Wenfu very uneasy. The large-scale surrender of the star territory lords meant that the people's support had collapsed. If the people's support was completely lost, the Xia Dynasty's luck would easily be deprived of the Great Xia Dynasty. Pei Wenfu was a little anxious at this time. I don't know if the envoys sent out have met the head of the Great Xia Dynasty. According to the speed of Xia Dynasty's attack, it won't be long before Xia Dynasty's army appears on the Emperor Star. By then, peace talks will be meaningless. Pei Wenfu stood up and paced back and forth in the Imperial Study, trying hard to think of ways to survive this crisis. At this moment, a guard entered the Imperial Study Room with a piece of information, Your Majesty, something serious has happened. After hearing the guard's words, Pei Wenfu's face became even more ugly. The sentence he heard most in the past month was something bad is going to happen. Pei Wenfu asked impatiently, which star region has fallen again? The guard handed over the information in his hands. Some royal family members appeared on the battlefield with a large number of soldiers, intending to fight to the death with the Great Xia Dynasty. After hearing the guard's report, Pei Wenfu's face instantly turned pale, and he quickly took it. Take the jade slip in the guard's hand, and then input the spiritual power. The next moment, the information in the jade slip appeared in the air. Seeing the content in the jade slip, Pei Wenfu was trembling with anger. These old immortal things! What on earth are they doing? Are you trying to kill me? He just sent an envoy to the front line to negotiate peace. As a result, these royal clansmen led troops and ran to fight to the death with the Xia Dynasty. If the Xia Dynasty found out that those people were the royal clansmen of the Xia Dynasty, the head of the Xia Dynasty would. I don't think that all this was ordered by him, the emperor. As a result, the peace talks came to nothing. Pei Wenfu quickly realized that these old guys clearly didn't want him to negotiate peace and wanted to provoke a war between Xia and the Xia Dynasty. Pei Wenfu clenched his fists and finally made a decision. He could not let those old guys ruin his plan. He would go to the front line to negotiate peace in person. Tianluo Star Territory. Several immortal boats were suspended quietly in the void, and in front of these immortal boats were hundreds of starships exuding metallic luster. Pei Nian was now on the deck of the ferry boat. Seeing such a large group of starships, he couldn't help but feel a little scared. A soldier next to Pei Nian said, "Strange, why hasn't the Great Xia Dynasty attacked yet?" On their way to the front line, they heard that the situation on the front line was very bad. Half of the entire Red Moon Dynasty's star field had been occupied by the troops of the Great Xia Dynasty. It stands to reason that the Great Xia Dynasty should be planning to take over the entire Red Moon Dynasty in one go. Why has it stopped now? Pei Nian thought about it and was about to send someone to test it. At this time, a figure suddenly flew in front of their immortal boat. The Emperor of Heaven has ordered that the people of the Red Moon Dynasty will not be killed if they surrender. Before Pei Nian and his men arrived at the front line, Pei Tianluo had already sensed their existence through the power of blood, and he also realized that these Pei family members did not come to surrender, but to fight with the Great Xia Dynasty. This also made Pei Tianluo feel a little relieved. Not all of his descendants are like Pei Wenfu. Hearing the words of the Quasi Emperor in the void, Pei Nian snorted coldly, "Even if we die, we will never surrender." As soon as Pei Nian finished speaking, a Quasi Emperor of the Pei family shouted, "Attack! Let these invaders know that our Pei family's star field is not so easy to occupy." Immediately afterwards, Pei Nian and several Quasi-Emperors of the Pei family left the immortal boat and directly attacked the starships in the distance, trying to destroy them. However, at this moment, a huge golden statue suddenly appeared in front of the Great Xia fleet, followed by a huge pressure. Feeling the pressure of the Emperor, Pei Nian and others gritted their teeth. Quasi-Emperors were fine, barely able to resist the pressure, but saints and cultivators below saints were extremely uncomfortable. They felt that the bones of their bodies were about to be crushed by the pressure. At this moment, Pei Nian looked at the statue in front of him, and his brain was stunned. He raised his arm like a dead tree and rubbed his eyes. He couldn't believe his eyes. Why is this statue so similar to the statue of their ancestor? End of this chapter. Chapter 1042 Great, the ancestor is not dead. At this time, a quasi-emperor of the Pei family might be able to withstand the pressure and plan to take action against the great emperor in the distance. They had no intention of returning alive, and even if they took action against the great emperor, they were not afraid. But before the quasi-emperor took action, Pei Nian quickly stopped him. "Wait a minute, didn't you find that this Dharma image looks familiar?" Hearing what Pei Nian said, the Pei family members reacted one by one. The younger generation of the Pei family may not have seen Pei Tianluo's appearance, but quasi-emperors like Pei Nian have seen it many times. At this moment, a quasi-emperor of the Pei family murmured, "It's strange, why does this Dharma look so like the ancestors' Dharma?" After hearing this, everyone in the Pei family reacted. They asked why this Dharma image looked so familiar. Isn't that what their ancestors looked like? What's going on? Why does the image of their ancestor appear in this place? The quasi-emperors of the Pei family look at me and I look at you, not knowing what to do next. At this moment, an old man's voice sounded from the void, "You are very good, you did not disappoint me." Hearing this voice, Pei Nian's brain was startled. If he just saw the Dharma image, he would not dare to confirm it 100%, but after hearing the voice, he knew that he could basically confirm that this Dharma image was the Dharma image of their ancestor. For a moment, Pei Nian connected all the things that happened during this period together. He suddenly realized and said, "No wonder, no wonder. I'm just talking about how those star fields could be defeated so quickly. It's the ancestor is back." After Pei Nian finished speaking, the other Pei family members also reacted, and suddenly everyone in the Pei family became excited. It's the ancestor! Great, the ancestor is not dead! The ancestor is back! At this time, Pei Nian and several quasi-emperors of the Pei family respectfully saluted Pei Tianlu's Dharma Prime Minister and said, "Junior generation pays homage to the ancestor and welcomes the ancestor back to the court." Hearing this, Pei Tianlu on the Fiheng immortal boat showed a wry smile. He knew that the Pei family did not realize that he had joined the Great Xia Dynasty, and they probably thought he was making a comeback. Then Pei Tianlu said, "Pei Nian, you guys come here, I have something to tell you." People like Pei Nian are all descendants of Pei Tianlu. Naturally, Pei Tianlu will not take action against them. He must make it clear to his descendants about joining the Great Xia Dynasty. After hearing Pei Tianlu's words, Pei Nian and the other quasi-emperor did not hesitate at all. They turned into streams of light and soon arrived on the Fiheng immortal boat. When they saw that Pei Tianlu on the deck of the ferry boat had no life force, they were shocked again. Not only is their ancestor back, but the death energy on his body has also disappeared. In other words, their ancestor has broken through the limit and reached a higher level of cultivation? Pei Nian quickly came to Pei Tianlu and asked, "Ancestor, have you exceeded the limit?" Pei Tianlu replied, "That's right." Pei Nian immediately knelt down and said, "Please come back to the court and regain the imperial power." Now that their ancestor has recovered and exceeded the limit, the traitor Pei Wenfu should be driven out. After Pei Nian knelt down, several other quasi-emperors also knelt down and said, "Please return to the court and regain the imperial power." Pei Tianlu sighed and said, "You guys should get up first and listen to what I have to say." Pei Nian then stood up, and they were also curious about what Pei Tianlu wanted to say at this time. Pei Tianlu then came to the edge of the immortal boat, looked at the void in the distance, and sighed deeply. After a while, Pei Tianlu finally spoke, "I have surrendered to the Lord of Great Xia and am loyal to him. From now on, there will be no more Xia dynasty." Upon hearing this, Pei Nian and others were stunned for a moment. They thought Pei Tianlu came back this time to regain the throne, but they didn't expect that he came back to help the Great Xia dynasty occupy the Xia dynasty. For a moment, Pei Nian and others felt a little complicated and didn't know what to say. Although they are the royal family of the Scarlet Moon dynasty, the Scarlet Moon dynasty was founded by their ancestors after all. Now that their ancestors have joined other forces, it stands to reason that they should follow their ancestors, but let them just give up on the Red Moon dynasty. Yu dynasty, they still feel a little reluctant to leave. They are not all doing it for themselves. If they were just doing it for themselves, they would not be able to come here and fight against the Great Xia dynasty. What they are most worried about is that if they join the Great Xia dynasty, their dynasty luck will be completely dissipated, and their descendants will likely suffer the backlash of their dynasty luck in the future. Pei Nian and others fell into silence for a long time. After an unknown period of time, Pei Nian asked, "Is it because the Lord of Great Xia helped me that my ancestor was able to break through the limit?" Pei Nian believes that their ancestor is not a person who is willing to be subordinate to others unless the other party gives their ancestor enough benefits. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. The biggest benefit he thought of was life-saving grace, and it just so happened that the death energy on their ancestors disappeared at this time. Pei Tianluo replied, yes. Pei Nian said, this junior understands that I am willing to follow my ancestor and join the Great Xia Dynasty. After Pei Nian finished speaking, several other Quasi emperors also said at the same time, we are also willing to join the Great Xia Dynasty with our ancestors. As soon as everyone finished speaking, a young man wearing a white dragon robe with gold trim appeared in front of them. Pei Tianluo immediately said to Pei Nian and others, this is the Lord of Daxia. Pei Nian led several Quasi emperors, and without saying a word, he saluted Lu Chen and said, greetings to your majesty, we are willing to follow your majesty to the death. As their words fell, everyone noticed that their original luck was passing quickly and quickly dissipated completely. But then, another wave of luck enveloped them, and this luck was even more majestic. As the new luck enveloped them, they suddenly found that they had vague signs of a breakthrough, which made everyone unable to believe it. For the vast majority of Quasi-emperors, if there is no opportunity, they will only be able to wait in the Quasi-emperor realm for the rest of their lives. Among the 10,000 Quasi-emperors, not even one person may be able to achieve enlightenment successfully. Unexpectedly, they were just expressing their allegiance to the head of a newly emerging dynasty. The good fortune of the Great Xia Dynasty gave them a vague sense of breakthrough. No wonder their ancestors wanted to follow the young emperor in front of them. Now Pei Nian and others were completely relieved. They immediately received the blessing of the Great Xia Dynasty's luck when they joined the Great Xia Dynasty, and their descendants would probably be the same. Judging from the results, there are more benefits for them to join the Great Xia Dynasty than to continue to maintain the Qiyu Dynasty, a dynasty that has exhausted its power. So there is no longer any suspense about what they should choose. At this time, Pei Nian asked, Ancestor, what do you plan to do with Pei Wenfu? Although their ancestor and Pei Wenfu both defected to other dynasties and seemed to have done the same thing, Pei Wenfu betrayed the Qiyu dynasty first. Pei Tianluo sighed and did not answer. To be honest, he didn't know how to deal with Pei Wenfu. As an ancestor, he himself had defected to other dynasties, and even brought the Great Xia Dynasty to attack the Qiyu Dynasty. It looked like he was luring a wolf into the house, so what qualifications did he have to say that Pei Wenfu did something wrong? Pei Nian also saw what Pei Tianluo was thinking, and then suggested, how about expelling his lineage from the Pei clan? Pei Tianluo thought for a while but did not answer. His eyes fell on Lu Chen. End of chapter. Chapter 1043 I am right. Pei Tianluo has now pledged his allegiance to Lu Chen. The Scarlet Moon Dynasty and the Great Xia Dynasty are now in a state of hostility, and Pei Wenfu is the emperor of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty. It is not him who has the final say on how to deal with Pei Wenfu. When Lu Chen saw Pei Tianluo looking at him, he understood that Pei Tianluo wanted to ask his opinion, so he said, Pei Wenfu is your descendant. It's up to you to decide what to do. Pei Tianluo quickly saluted and said, Thank you, Your Majesty. Lu Chen's words were equivalent to giving Pei Wenfu a gold medal to avoid death. After Pei Tianluo and the Pei family met again, they immediately began to prepare to spread the news of Pei Tianluo's return. Now if you want to get the bad luck of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty, the best way is to announce Pei Tianluo's return to the Scarlet Moon Dynasty, and then let Pei Tianluo take charge of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty again. In the end, under the witness of the people of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty, Pei Tianluo took the initiative to declare his allegiance to Lu Chen, and the Scarlet Moon Dynasty merged into the Great Xia Dynasty. In this way, the fate of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty would be integrated into the Great Xia Dynasty. Pei Wenfu was completely unaware of what was going to happen next. He had already led the ministers to the Tianluo Star territory, intending to negotiate peace with the Great Xia Dynasty. After Lu Chen learned that Pei Wenfu had come to the Tianluo Star territory in person, he stopped letting the Daxia army advance. He himself waited in the Tianluo Star territory, waiting for Pei Wenfu to come to negotiate peace. A month passed in the blink of an eye, and Pei Wenfu finally led a group of ministers from the Scarlet Moon Dynasty to the Tianluo Star territory. As soon as the ferry boat that Pei Wenfu was riding arrived at the Tianluo Star territory, Pei Wenfu sensed the existence of the starship in the Tianluo Star territory. He walked out of Xianzhou's room and came to the deck of Xianzhou. Looking from a distance, on the other side of the Tianluo starfield, hundreds of starships emitting metallic luster were lined up. In front of these starships, there is a gleaming golden ferry boat that is very luxurious. There are formations emitting blue light everywhere on the ferry boat. It looks like it is of high quality. Pei Wenfu asked the guard on the side, "How is the negotiation between the envoy and the Xia Dynasty going?" The guard replied, "There is no result yet. They have not seen the Lord of Great Xia. Some members of the mission have returned." Hearing the guard's answer, Pei Wenfu felt worried. At this time, a member of the mission came to the ferry boat where Pei Wenfu was sitting happily. "Your Majesty, what a happy event, what a great happy event!" After hearing what the minister said, Pei Wenfu asked curiously, "Lu Iking, what happy event do you mean?" The minister said, "The Great Xia Dynasty has agreed to negotiate a peace. They will send a mission here tomorrow. The location of the peace negotiation is up to us." Pei Wenfu was overjoyed and asked quickly, "Is this true?" The minister nodded and said, "Seriously, seriously, it is said that this was said by the Lord of Great Xia himself." Pei Wenfu breathed a sigh of relief. Actually, the Lord of Xia had agreed to negotiate peace, so his throne would most likely be saved. Then Pei Wenfu said, "Go down immediately and prepare for the visit of Xia's envoy tomorrow." After Pei Wenfu finished speaking, Xia's ministers took action as soon as they arrived, and soon they decided on a place for peace talks. The location of the peace negotiation is set to be the Territory Lord's Mansion in the Tianluo Star territory, and Pei Wenfu and many ministers from the Xia Dynasty will attend. Early the next morning, Pei Wenfu changed his clothes, got ready early, and waited for Xia's delegation to arrive at the Territory Lord's Mansion in the Tianluo Star territory. The venomous sunshine shone on the earth, making it impossible to open one's eyes. By noon, Xia's envoy had not yet arrived. Pei Wenfu looked up at the sky, feeling a little anxious, worried about what might happen. At this time, Pei Wenfu suddenly thought of something. Pei Nian and his group had disappeared since they came to the Tianluo Star territory. In order to prevent Pei Nian from ruining his plan, he sent many people to look for traces of Pei Nian and his companions, but no traces were found, so he thought that Pei Nian and his companions had been eliminated by the army of the Great Xia Dynasty. But now that I think about it, it seems that Pei Nian and the others are still hiding in the dark, just to wait until today to appear and then destroy the peace negotiation between the Xia Dynasty and the Xia Dynasty? Thinking of this, Pei Wenfu's expression changed greatly, and he quickly said to the guards behind him, "Quick, let someone go immediately to check whether the Xia Dynasty's envoy has been attacked." As soon as Pei Wenfu finished speaking, a familiar voice came, "Don't worry about the Moon Emperor. Who dares to attack the envoys of the Great Xia Dynasty at this time?" Upon hearing this familiar voice, Pei Wenfu's face darkened instantly, because he immediately recognized that the voice belonged to Pei Nian. Sure enough, the next moment Pei Nian appeared in the sky with a group of people. Seeing Pei Nian and others, the Quasi-Emperor next to Pei Wenfu immediately surrounded Pei Wenfu. A Quasi-Emperor scolded, "Pei Nian, what are you doing here? You are not allowed to come here today." Pei Nian immediately said to the person behind him, "Show the flag." As soon as he finished speaking, a huge flag appeared in the sky. That flag was obviously the flag of the Great Xia Dynasty. Pei Nian continued, "Today I am here to discuss peace on behalf of the Great Xia Dynasty. You don't need to be nervous." The ministers of the Xia Dynasty were shocked. Come to negotiate peace on behalf of the Great Xia Dynasty? When did Pei Nian join the Great Xia Dynasty? Aren't those clans hardline and refusing to surrender? Why do those clan members kneel down faster than their majesty? Pei Wenfu was also dumbfounded. He did not expect that those clansmen would call him a traitor while secretly joining the Great Xia Dynasty. After a long time, Pei Wenfu came back to his senses. Since Pei Shangxi is here to negotiate peace, please come in. Pei Wenfu did not care who came to negotiate peace. As long as he could stabilize his throne, it would be the same whoever came to negotiate peace. Seeing Pei Wenfu's flattering look, Pei Nian laughed, Emperor Yu, don't be anxious. Before the peace talks, I want to introduce someone to everyone. Hearing this, everyone was a little confused. Who should they introduce to them? At this time, there was a fluctuation in the space, and the next moment, a figure appeared in the sky. Seeing the sudden appearance of the person, Pei Wenfu and the ministers of the Red Moon Dynasty suddenly felt their brains go blank. Pei Wenfu murmured, No. Impossible. How could you still be alive? Feng Tengfei had told him that Pei Tianlu was already seriously injured, and with the deadline approaching, he would definitely not live long. However, Pei Tianlu appeared here at this time, and Pei Wenfu could not believe that the person in front of him was Pei Tianlu. If it was Pei Tianlu who came back, there was no need to think about what his fate would be. The old ministers of the Red Moon Dynasty also could not believe what they saw, especially those ministers of Pei Wenfu's faction. The death aura on Pei Tianlu in the sky had dissipated, which proved that he had broken through the deadline. Pei Tianlu's original strength was very strong, and now he has broken through the deadline again. His cultivation has made another breakthrough. No one in the entire Red Moon Dynasty is his opponent. Not to mention the Red Moon Dynasty, even the Emperor of the King Yun Dynasty did not dare to provoke Pei Tianlu in his heyday, not to mention that Pei Tianlu had broken through. At this time, a minister with a sly look suddenly thought of something, so he immediately knelt on the ground and shouted loudly, Welcome the Grand Emperor Taixia back to the court. Hearing this, the other ministers of the Red Moon Dynasty came to their senses one after another, and they also knelt on the ground hurriedly, Welcome the Grand Emperor Taixia back to the court. Seeing that all his people knelt down, Pei Wenfu was immediately furious, You. The fear mixed with anger made Pei Wenfu a lot bolder. He raised his head and stared straight at Pei Tianlu in the sky, I am right. End of this chapter. Chapter 1044 Mysterious Immortal Ship. Looking at Pei Wenfu who had fallen into madness, Pei Tianlu just sighed. He had no intention of discussing who was right and who was wrong with Pei Wenfu today. It is an established fact that Pei Wenfu lured the wolf into the house and betrayed the Xia Dynasty. But he also did the same thing, so he was not qualified to blame Pei Wenfu. Pei Tianlu said at this time, Take the children of your Pei family and leave the Xia Dynasty and never come back. Hearing Pei Tianlu's words, Pei Wenfu, who was about to vent his anger, was stunned. He did not expect that Pei Tianlu actually planned to let him go. After Pei Wenfu came to his senses, he asked in disbelief, You won't kill me? Pei Tianlu said indifferently, I chose you in the first place. I am blind, but after all, you have the blood of the Pei family. Go away and support me before I regret it. Pei Wenfu clenched his fists. Although he lost the throne, at least he was still alive. As long as a person is alive, he still has hope. Pei Wenfu didn't hesitate, he took out an immortal boat, jumped on it, and left the Tianluo Star territory without looking back. Seeing Pei Wenfu leave like this, everyone present felt incredible. They originally thought that Pei Tianlu was going to put Pei Wenfu on trial, but in the end they just told Pei Wenfu to leave without saying anything. Just when people were distracted, Pei Tianlu suddenly released the aura of the Emperor, and a huge coercion instantly descended on the entire Tianluo Star territory. Pei Tianlu said coldly to the ministers of Pei Wenfu's faction present, Pei Wenfu is gone, let's settle the accounts. Just because Pei Tianlu didn't want to kill people related to his bloodline didn't mean that he was really merciful. Pei Wenfu could betray him and the Scarlet Moon Dynasty, but it didn't mean that others could betray the Scarlet Moon Dynasty. Soon, Pei Tianlu dealt with the people of Pei Wenfu's faction, and then he had people release the news, telling the people of the Xia Dynasty that he had returned and regained power. When all the forces in the Xia Dynasty heard that Pei Tianlu was back, Their first reaction was not to believe it. After all, Pei Tianlu had already been riddled with death energy and there was no way he was still alive. However, when spies sent by various forces found out that Pei Wenfu had escaped from the Xia Dynasty with his lineage, and Pei Tianlu broke through the limit, they believed the rumors. Soon, Pei Tianlu returned to the Emperor Star and regained control of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty. The dynasty fortune of the Scarlet Moon Dynasty also returned to him. After regaining control of the Xia Dynasty, Pei Tianlu did not rush to declare his allegiance to the Xia Dynasty immediately. Instead, he allowed various high-tech companies of the Xia Dynasty to first enter the Xia Dynasty to open branches. It would take a process for the people of the Xia Dynasty to completely accept the Great Xia Dynasty. Of course, he believed that this process would not take long. As long as the territory lord-level figures in the Great Xia Dynasty are persuaded, the matter is basically half successful. After Pei Wenfu escaped from the Xia Dynasty with his descendants, wives, and concubines, they wandered aimlessly in the void. Pei Wenfu doesn't know where to go now. He can clearly feel that the luck of him and his descendants has completely passed away. Without luck, they will encounter all kinds of troubles in the future, and they must find a backer as soon as possible. Pei Wenfu was still a little unwilling in his heart. After all, the emperor was his. In his opinion, all this was Pei Tianlu's fault. If Pei Tianlu hadn't wanted to abdicate and pass the throne to Pei Shihua, he would not have united with the King Yun dynasty. In order to relieve the depression in his heart, Pei Wenfu now has fun in Xianzhou's room every day. At this moment, Pei Wenfu was holding a whip and severely beating the woman in front of him. His eyes were bloodshot, completely ignoring the woman's plea for mercy. Suddenly, the entire ferry boat shook, and soon, the voice of a guard came from outside his room. "Your Majesty, something bad has happened. We have encountered space turbulence." After hearing this, Pei Wenfu woke up instantly. He walked out of the room in disheveled clothes and came to the deck of the ferry boat. Standing on the deck of the ferry boat, he could clearly see that the void in the star field they were in was constantly undulating like waves, and there were some black whirlpools in front of them, and the fragments of the world around them were being swept away. Inhaled into the whirlpool. Pei Wenfu didn't pay too much attention. After all, he was a saint, and when he left the Xia dynasty, he brought several close associates of the Quasi Emperor with him. With the Quasi Emperor here, it is not a problem to get rid of the turbulence in space. Pei Wenfu immediately sent a message and said, "Several worshippers, the rest is up to you." However, after Pei Wenfu finished speaking, he did not see the Quasi Emperor appearing in the void. Pei Wenfu was stunned for a moment and quickly sent the message again, "Zhang Chongfeng, Zhao Chongfeng, if we don't take action now, when will we wait?" After Pei Wenfu finished speaking, a personal guard came to Pei Wenfu and said, "Your Majesty, several of the worshippers have left." Hearing the words of the personal guards, Pei Wenfu suddenly felt his eyes darken. The personal guards around him quickly came up to support his body. "Your Majesty, take care of your dragon body." Pei Wenfu tried hard to calm down his inner emotions. He had long expected that these offerings would probably leave, so he quickly adjusted his mentality. It's just space turbulence, and he, a saint, can also get rid of it. Pei Wenfu immediately released his power, wrapped up all the immortal boats, and worked hard to get the immortal boats out of the space turbulence. At this time, several saints among his descendants also exerted their strength together, and their immortal boats slowly broke away from the space turbulence. However, just as they were about to leave the influence of the space turbulence, black vortices suddenly appeared under their immortal boats. Feeling the black vortex, Pei Wenfu was about to escape alone by shuttling through space, but soon he found that his power was imprisoned, and the power he released could not escape the influence of the black vortex, and was all sucked into the black vortex. Soon, their immortal boat and all of them were sucked into the black vortex, and Pei Wenfu fell into a coma. When Pei Wenfu opened his eyes again, he found himself floating in an unknown star field. Pei Wenfu hurriedly explored the star field he was in. After his exploration, he found that the star field he was in was very prosperous, with immortal boats coming and going everywhere in the distance, and the life world in this star field was all a high-level world, with very rich spiritual energy. Pei Wenfu was overjoyed. There is always a way out. By practicing in such a star field, his strength will surely be rapidly improved. One day, he will take back everything he has lost with his own hands. Just as Pei Wenfu was imagining that he would take back everything he had lost after becoming stronger, a huge ferry ship appeared in the distance. Wherever the ferry ship passed, all the ferry boats around would make way. The Tao rhyme flowed on the ferry ship, and there were sounds of piano. Pei Wenfu looked up and found that there was a purple gauze curtain on the deck of the ferry ship, and there was a graceful figure looming in the curtain. For a moment, Pei Wenfu was stunned. Pei Wenfu was completely unaware that his consciousness was unscrupulously spying on a terrifying existence. At this moment, the piano sound suddenly stopped, and a terrifying force instantly enveloped Pei Wenfu. End of this chapter. Chapter 1045, The Secret Girl. Pei Wenfu felt that his body and soul were about to be crushed. He quickly begged for mercy, "Senior, have mercy on me, I have no intention of spying." The woman on the ferry boat ignored Pei Wenfu's plea for mercy. She gently raised her jade hand, and a purple light shot out of the woman's hand and flew into Pei Wenfu's forehead instantly. The woman's cold voice sounded in the ferry ship, "It's his breath." The next moment, Pei Wenfu felt that his soul was about to be torn apart. "Senior, Senior, forgive." Bang! Before Pei Wenfu could finish speaking, his body exploded into countless fragments. At the same time, Scarlet Moon Dynasty, Emperor Star. In the palace, Pei Tianluo was reporting information about the King Yun Dynasty to Lu Chen. Suddenly, Pei Tianluo felt flustered and in severe pain. Pei Tianluo couldn't stand firm for a moment and fell to the ground. Seeing this sudden scene, Lu Chen was stunned for a moment and quickly used the King Mu longevity technique to check Pei Tianluo's body. "Mr. Pei, what are you doing?" Lu Chen checked and found that Pei Tianluo's body was fine and there was no hidden injury. Pei Tianluo did not answer Lu Chen's question immediately. His face was pale and cold sweat was constantly breaking out on his forehead. After a while, Pei Tianluo recovered. "Your Majesty, someone is locking my position through the power of blood." Pei Tianluo had just clearly felt through the power of blood that Pei Wenfu was dead, and that someone was using Pei Wenfu's blood as a guide to track his location. Fortunately, a mysterious force suddenly appeared and cut off the other party's perception, otherwise his location might have been found by that person. Hearing Pei Tianluo's words, Lu Chen asked doubtfully, "Lock your position?" Pei Wenfu pondered for a while, and then continued, "Yes, that woman's strength is very terrifying. She killed Pei Wenfu, and then used the power of Pei Wenfu's blood as a guide to find my location." Fortunately, a mysterious force interrupted the woman. Lu Chen continued to ask, "How do you know that person is a woman?" Pei Tianluo replied, "When she used her secret technique to lock my position, my consciousness vaguely sensed her." Lu Chen frowned slightly and then asked, "What does that woman look like?" Pei Tianluo thought for a while and replied. She was sitting in a ferry ship, wearing a purple kerchief, so her face couldn't be seen clearly. Pei Tianluo felt chills running down his spine when he thought of the coercion exuded by that woman just now. Lu Chen continued, "You said there was a mysterious force that interrupted her locking on your position just now. What happened to that mysterious force?" Pei Tianluo said, "I don't know, just when the woman was about to lock my position, the mysterious power suddenly appeared, and then the blood power between Pei Tianluo and me was severed." Lu Chen has basically determined that the mysterious power is probably related to the system. I don't know if that woman is a friend or an enemy. When Lu Chen was distracted, Pei Tianluo reminded, "Your Majesty, that woman's strength is very terrifying. I just sensed her existence and her power was sealed. She must have learned about the existence of the Great Xia Dynasty through soul searching. We have to be prepared. Lu Chen's expression immediately became very serious. He had just taken the first step when big trouble came to his door. I understand. Lu Chen planned to keep a low profile after conquering the King Yun dynasty. He would first send people to find out the situation in the surrounding star field before making further plans. There are people outside the world, and there is a sky outside the world. He doesn't think that he will be invincible after he breaks through and becomes the emperor. At this moment, in a certain bustling star field, a fairy ship floated aimlessly in the void. On the deck of the fairy ship, a woman wearing a purple scarf looked into the distance and said to herself, "I found you." At this moment, a golden image of the great emperor suddenly appeared in front of the fairy ship. The emperor in the void looked straight at the woman on the ferry boat. "Tianjinu, the catastrophe is coming. Are you really unwilling to join forces with me to fight against the catastrophe?" As soon as the emperor in the void finished speaking, the woman's cold voice came from the fairy ship, "Emperor Shenyu, do you really think you can survive the catastrophe?" Upon hearing the woman's words, Emperor Shenyu's expression changed instantly. "What do you mean?" Tianjinu's deduction skills can see the past and the future, and Emperor Shenyu will pay attention to whatever she says. The woman said indifferently, "The great catastrophe is also a new life, and no one can stop it." Emperor Shenyu snorted coldly, "My life is only in my hands." The woman continued, "Everything you do is ultimately in vain." Emperor Shenyu snorted coldly and said nothing more. The Dharma appearance instantly dissipated. After the appearance of Emperor Shenyu disappeared, the woman looked at the edge of the universe again. Variables have appeared, and a good show is about to take place. After the woman finished speaking, her delicate jade fingers fell on the guqin in front of herself again, and then she gently plucked the strings. The strings did not make any sound, but instead emitted streaks of purple light. These purple light waves spread out at extremely fast speeds. In the star field where the woman is, there is a huge life world. This life world is not round, but has a round sky and a round place. This life world is very prosperous, with large and small immortal boats coming and going, and the spiritual energy is also very rich. The rain is also spiritual rain. The ordinary people in this life world have cultivation in the yin-yang realm. In the center of this world, there stands a high mountain, and on this mountain, there are countless cities. On the top of the mountain, there is a superpower called Yunhua Palace. At this moment, the main hall of the Yunhua Palace. A beautiful woman in a green dress is sitting on the crystal throne in the main hall. The beautiful woman is gorgeous and elegant. In the main hall, there is a stunning beauty kneeling. The beautiful woman glanced at the woman kneeling in the main hall and asked coldly, "Tell me, who is he?" Lu Qingyun lowered her head and did not answer. The beautiful woman continued, "Do you really think you can hide it from everyone?" Lu Qingyun still did not speak. Now she can't leave Lu Chen. If she tells Lu Chen, with the temper of the palace master, she may directly send someone to kill Lu Chen. Yunhua Palace is a superpower like the Holy Land of the universe. There are no less than 50 emperors in Yunhua Palace. With the strength of Yunhua Palace, it is too easy to destroy a new dynasty. Seeing that Lu Qingyun still did not answer her question, the momentum of the beautiful woman rose, and a terrifying pressure instantly pressed on Lu Qingyun. Lu Qingyun spurted out a mouthful of blood, she bit her silver teeth lightly, and supported her body. The Dushan Empress said coldly, "As the saint of Yunhua Palace and the next palace master, you should know very well that you cannot have any love between men and women, and you actually let a man take away your yuan yin. Do you know what you are doing?" Lu Qingyun gritted her teeth and said, "I am ashamed of Yunhua Palace and Master's cultivation. Please punish me, Master." The Dushan Empress said coldly, "You are not ashamed of Yunhua Palace or me, you are ashamed of yourself." At this point, the momentum of the Dushan Empress became stronger. She waved her hand and Lu Qingyun was directly blown away by a powerful force. After Lu Qingyun landed, she quickly stood up again and continued to kneel on the ground. At this time, the pressure in the hall disappeared instantly. Forget it, since you have lost your virginity, from now on, you are no longer the saint of Yunhua Palace, and the position of saint will be handed over to Lai Hongyun. End of this chapter. Chapter 1046, The Reminder from the Lady of Heaven. After hearing the words of the Dushan Empress, Lu Qingyun immediately kowtowed and said, "Thank you, Master, for your help. Without the position of the saint, it means that she can have a Taoist partner from now on. This seems to be a punishment for her, but in fact it is a help for her." The Dushan Empress said coldly, "Why, do you think I am helping you? From today on, you will stay in the Jingzhen Tower for me, and you are not allowed to leave the Jingzhen Tower for 10,000 years. Hearing this, Lu Qingyun did not show any expression on her face, as if she didn't care at all. With Lu Qingkai's clone by Lu Chen's side, even if her main body did not leave Yunhua Palace, she could still use Lu Qingkai's body to make love with Lu Chen. Seeing Lu Qingyun's indifferent expression, the Dushan Empress frowned slightly, but she didn't say anything more. She waved her hand, "You can go to the Jingzhen Tower." Lu Qingyun immediately stood up, "Disciple, I'm leaving." After the voice fell, Lu Qingyun turned around and left the hall. Looking at Lu Qingyun's departing back, Empress Dushan's face became more and more ugly. The body she had worked so hard to cultivate was destroyed just like that. How could she not be angry? Fortunately, God sent another extremely talented woman to Yunhua Palace. With Lai Hongyun's talent, it won't take long for her strength to surpass Lu Qingyun. However, Empress Dushan didn't intend to let it go. She would find a way to deal with the person who broke Lu Qingyun's union. Even if Lu Qingyun didn't tell her, she could find out who the other party was through other channels. Just as Empress Dushan was distracted by Lu Qingyun's back, she suddenly felt a special force passing through her body. Then, a cold female voice sounded in her mind, "The great catastrophe is about to start, and it will come in 10,000 years." Hearing this, Empress Dushan's face changed instantly. How could it be? How could the catastrophe come early? The Empress Dushan knew very well who had said this. There was only one person in this universe who had the ability to transmit the message to all the emperors in the universe, and that was Tianji. She did not doubt the truth of Tianji's words at all. Tianji could see the past and the future. As long as she said it, it would definitely happen. 10,000 years ago, Tianji calculated that it would take at least 1 million years for this universe to usher in the catastrophe again, although 1 million years was a short time for a great emperor. But there was still 1 million years after all, and 1 million years was enough time for the emperors to prepare for the catastrophe. Now the catastrophe has come so much earlier, and there is only 10,000 years to prepare. How can they deal with the catastrophe? Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Empress Dushan thought, no, she must let Lai Hongyun grow up as soon as possible. If Lai Hongyun cannot break through to the quasi-emperor realm within these 10,000 years, and she does not have a body that can be taken over, then she may not be able to survive the catastrophe. Thinking of this, Empress Dushan immediately sent a message to all the disciples and elders of Yunhua Palace. From now on, Lu Qingyun is no longer the saint of Yunhua Palace. The new saint is Lai Hongyun. 3 days later, a coronation ceremony will be held for the new saint. Hearing this, both the disciples and elders of Yunhua Palace were stunned. Everyone in Yunhua Palace saw how good Empress Dushan was to Lu Qingyun. It can be said that Empress Dushan treated Lu Qingyun as her daughter. Now Empress Dushan actually abolished Lu Qingyun's position as saint. What happened? Why did Empress Dushan make such a decision? Although it was a little unbelievable, it was Empress Dushan's decision after all, and no one dared to object. At this time, Lu Qingyun, who had already entered the meditation tower, breathed a sigh of relief after hearing Empress Dushan's message. She finally got rid of this identity. From now on, she will no longer be bound by this identity. However, she still felt a little disappointed when she thought that her original body would not be able to see Lu Chen for the next 10,000 years. Yunhua Palace. The residence of the direct disciples. In a bamboo forest, there is a small courtyard. In the courtyard, a woman in a red dress is waving a spear in her hand. After hearing the voice transmission of the Dushan Empress, Lai Hongyun stopped her movements and looked towards the direction of the meeting hall with an expressionless face. She didn't care about the identity of the saint at all. On the contrary, she felt that this identity was a burden to her. Compared with the matter of the saint, Lai Hongyun was more concerned about the 8 words she heard just now. Although she is not yet a great emperor, with the perception of her great emperor soul, she can also perceive the voice transmission of Tianji woman. Lai Hongyun said to herself, there are still 10,000 years left, it seems that I have to hurry up. She has now broken through to the saint realm. Although her cultivation level improved quickly in the early stage, it may take thousands of years to improve each level later. 10,000 years is still too short for her. After Lai Hongyun finished speaking, she lowered her head slightly and looked at the marriage lines wrapped around her body. Seeing these marriage lines, Lai Hongyun frowned slightly. If she wanted to improve her cultivation quickly, she had to be focused. But since she met that man, she would be affected by the marriage lines from time to time, which made it impossible for her to calm down and practice. Originally, she could ignore these marriage lines. As long as she cultivated to the Great Emperor realm, she would be able to cut off these marriage lines. But now there is only 10,000 years left before the great catastrophe. If she continues to let these marriage lines drag her down, she may not have broken through to the Great Emperor realm when the great catastrophe comes. At that time, let alone cutting off these marriage lines, even her life will not be saved. However, there is only one way to deal with these marriage lines now, that is to find that man, either kill him or become a Taoist partner with him. Only in this way, her future cultivation will not be dragged down by the marriage lines. No matter which method is used, she must find that man first. She is a little unsure whether the man is still in the Chaos Star Sea. Although she can find him along the marriage line, the universe is very large. If the other party is too far away from her, it will take a long time to find him. And that man is also the reincarnation of the Great Emperor. He will definitely not stay in one place, which increases the difficulty of finding him. Red Moon Dynasty, inside the palace. In the Imperial Garden, Lu Chen kept sneezing. Ah, ha. Ah, ha. Strange, who is thinking about me? It's impossible for a great emperor like me to catch a cold, right? As soon as Lu Chen finished speaking, he suddenly felt a strange force passing through his body, and that force was spreading rapidly to the edge of the universe in the form of a wave. Then, a cold female voice appeared in Lu Chen's mind. The great catastrophe is about to begin, and it will take 10,000 years. Lu Chen was slightly stunned. Who is transmitting the voice? Soon Pei Tianlu also heard this voice, and the next moment, Pei Tianlu appeared in the Imperial Garden. Seeing Pei Tianlu's astonished expression, Lu Chen asked tentatively, Mr. Pei, did you hear it too? End of this chapter. Chapter 1047. He is our father after all. Seeing Lu Chen asking himself, Pei Tianlu knew that Lu Chen must have heard it, and he immediately nodded and said, I heard it. Without saying a word, Lu Chen released his consciousness, and in an instant his consciousness enveloped the entire Scarlet Moon Dynasty. Taiwan Novel Network. However, she did not detect the woman who transmitted the sound in the Xia Dynasty, which proved that the sound came from a farther place. Soon, Lu Chen realized that the sound should have come with the mysterious power from before. This power should come from far away, and the woman who delivers this message should not just deliver the message to one person, but to everyone in the universe. Thinking of this, Lu Chen immediately turned to look at Bai Qingqing beside him and asked, Xiao Bai, did you hear that voice? Hearing Lu Chen's question, Bai Qingqing looked at Lu Chen with confusion. What sound did your majesty say? Seeing Bai Qingqing's confused look, Lu Chen was stunned for a moment. It seemed that his guess was wrong, and not everyone could hear this voice. At this time, Pei Tianlu made a guess, Your Majesty, maybe only the Emperor can hear that woman's voice. After hearing what Pei Tianlu said, Lu Chen realized that the power was very special and contained a trace of original power. If it were an ordinary monk, it was indeed possible that he would not be able to sense the existence of that power. If you cannot feel that power, you will naturally not be able to receive the sound based on that power. In order to verify this conjecture, Lu Chen then asked several people, and the answers they received were that they did not hear any sounds. Now it was basically certain that Pei Tianlu's guess was correct. However, for the final verification, Lu Chen still sent a message to Empress Tianhong, Hong, did you hear that woman's voice just now? As soon as Lu Chen transmitted the message, he heard the cold voice of Empress Tianhong, that's the voice of Empress Tianji. After hearing Empress Tianhong's answer, Lu Chen murmured, NV Tianji. Hearing Lu Chen say the words Tianji Nu, Pei Tianlu suddenly thought of something, and then a look of sudden realization appeared on his face. Lu Chen looked at Pei Tianlu and asked, Mr. Pei, have you ever heard of Tianji Nu? Pei Tianlu replied, I heard about this person when I was in the outer realm. It is said that she can deduce ancient and modern times and know everything that happens in the past and future. And she's very powerful. It wouldn't be surprising if she was sending an early warning to the entire universe. Lu Chen pondered for a moment and stopped worrying about whose voice belonged to him. No matter which voice belonged to him, he could not contact the other person at this time. The most important thing now is that he needs to figure out whether what the other party is saying is true or false. If they really only have 10,000 years left to face a catastrophe, then they have to make preparations. Lu Chen asked, Mr. Pei, how likely do you think this is to be true? Pei Tianlu thought for a moment, if this news is really released by Tianji Nu, then there is a high probability that it is true. Although they knew that Tianji Nu could deduce what happened in the past and the future, they were not yet sure that the owner of the voice just now was Tianji Nu. Pei Tianlu continued, but having said that, if the other party is not Tianji Nu, then there seems to be no need for the other party to spread such rumors of an impending disaster. The news just now has probably spread throughout the universe. If anyone dares to spread such rumors, the Emperor will definitely go to Tianji Nu for confirmation. With Tianji Nu's deduction ability, she will definitely be able to find the person who spread the rumors. In this way, won't the person who spread the rumors become the target of public criticism? At that time, the whole universe will not be able to tolerate the rumor maker. Pei Tianlu believed that no one would do such a thing to shoot himself in the foot. Lu Chen thought about it and felt that what Pei Tianlu said made sense. Since Empress Tianhong thought that the voice was Tianji Nu's, she could just treat the news as true. But then again, how to fight against the Great Calamity? Speaking of fighting against the Great Calamity, a cold and dignified figure appeared in Lu Chen's mind. Yun Qingshu is one of the people he knows who has definitely survived the great catastrophe of the universe in the last era, so she must have experience. It seems that I have to have a good chat with Yun Qingshu. Speaking of the catastrophe of the universe, Lu Chen thought of something else. Some of his past life memories are still sealed in the Samsara stone, and he hasn't tried to unseal the Samsara stone for a long time. If the seal of the Samsara stone can be completely lifted, perhaps we can find a way to survive the catastrophe through the memories sealed in the Samsara stone. Since in Yun Qingshu's view, he was also a person in the ancient era who could survive the catastrophe of the universe, then maybe his previous life also existed in the ancient era. However, before unsealing the memory, Lu Chen planned to annex the Scarlet Moon Dynasty and the King Yun Dynasty first. By fusing the fortunes of the two dynasties, his strength would become stronger, which might be helpful in unsealing the reincarnation stone. Thinking of this, Lu Chen said to Pei Tianlu, since the disaster is coming, we should prepare early. 10,000 years is a long time for ordinary monks, but for the emperor, it is a bit short. Lu Chen was not sure whether he could find a way to survive the catastrophe in these 10,000 years. Pei Tianlu also heard the implication of Lu Chen's words, and he immediately said, the territorial lords of the Red Moon Dynasty have made it clear that they are loyal to your majesty, and the destiny of our dynasty can be integrated into the Great Xia Dynasty at any time. Lu Chen said, okay, then let's complete the merger this month. Yes, your majesty. Subordinates resign. After the words fell, Pei Tianlu turned and left to prepare for the dynasty merger ceremony. Central Star Field. Tianji Tower. Tianji Tower is located on a primitive continent, which is larger than some higher star fields. The Tianji Tower is millions of kilometers high. Viewed from outside the central star field, the Tianji Tower looks like a mountain towering on the primitive continent. At this moment, a luxurious and exquisite ferry boat slowly approached the top floor of Tianji Tower. Behind the ferry boat, a woman wearing a purple veil got off the ferry boat. As soon as the woman landed, a maid came to the woman and said, Holy girl, the eldest prince of the Xia dynasty wants to see you. Upon hearing this, Tianji Nu said softly, come up. As soon as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man wearing golden clothes appeared on the roof of Tianji Tower. The man saluted the Tianji girl and said, greetings to the holy girl. Tianji girl said abruptly, since you have already guessed it, why do you still come to me? Lu Yuanzhang was stunned when he heard Tianji Nu's words. Obviously, Tianji Nu already knew the reason why he came to her. Lu Yuanzhang said, I just can't believe that he would really do such a thing. After all, he is our father. Tianji Nu said calmly, he has already killed you once, do you still think he will care about your lives? All he cares about is how to survive the catastrophe of the universe. End of this chapter. Chapter 1048, Formal Annexation of the Red Moon Dynasty. After hearing what Tianji Nu said, Lu Yuanzhang fell into a long silence, not knowing what he was thinking. At first, he really thought that their father sent them to various worlds to train in order to select successors. If he had not awakened the ability to deduce the future during the trial, he might still be in the dark. He had already broken through to the realm of saints, but he was scared when he thought of the scene in the deduced future where he saw his father slaughter all his descendants and then take over his body. Fortunately, he learned some secret techniques to block Tianji, which prevented the Shenyu Emperor from sensing that he had become a saint through the power of blood. Otherwise, he might have been taken over by the Shenyu Emperor now. Not only was he taken over, but none of his brothers and sisters could escape. Now Lu Yuanzhang was confused, and he didn't know what to do. At this moment, Lu Yuanzhang thought of something. He looked directly at Tianji Nu and said, Saintess, if I am not wrong, I was able to awaken the ability to deduce the secrets of heaven because of the help of Tianji Tower. Lu Yuanzhang is not a fool. He is not on the path of deduction. How could he suddenly awaken the art of deduction? Now think about it, if he had not awakened the art of deduction, he would not have hidden his cultivation. His father would have probably taken over his body and become more powerful. A person who has not learned the art of deduction suddenly awakened the art of deduction and destroyed his father's plan. The art of deduction is closely related to Tianji Tower, and there are some contradictions between Tianji Tower and his father. It is hard not to think that all this is controlled by Tianji Tower behind the scenes. Of course, there is another point that makes Lu Yuanzhang suspect that all this is related to Tianji Tower, that is, shielding the secrets of heaven. He didn't believe that with his ability, he could really completely block the secrets of the heaven, so that his father couldn't detect his breakthrough to the saint realm through the power of blood. It was most likely that someone from the Tianji Tower helped him block the secrets of the heaven. Tianji girl said indifferently, you are very smart. All this is indeed related to the Tianji Tower. If there was no interference from the Tianji Tower, you would have been possessed by your father. Lu Yuanzhang immediately asked, since the Tianji Tower can change my fate, then I believe that with the ability of the Tianji Tower, it can also help me completely get rid of this crisis. Tianji girl turned to the high platform of the Tianji Tower, turned her back to Lu Yuanzhang and said, the Tianji Tower will not have a direct conflict with the Shenyu Emperor. Lu Yuanzhang was stunned. The Tianji Tower had already interfered with his future, and now it said that it would not have a direct conflict with the Shenyu Emperor. The fact that the Tianji Tower destroyed the plan of the Shenyu Emperor alone had already offended the Shenyu Emperor. If the Shenyu Emperor knew about this, he would definitely have a direct conflict with the Tianji Tower. It was a bit too naive for Tianji Tower to want to get rid of itself at this time. Could it be that Tianji Tower thought that the Emperor Shenyu would never know what they did? Tianji girl continued, new variables have appeared. As long as you leave the Xia Dynasty, you will not have to worry about your life. Hearing what Tianji girl said, Lu Yuanzhang was a little dumbfounded. It was too easy to get rid of the crisis by leaving the Xia Dynasty, right? What was the new variable that Tianji girl was talking about? Lu Yuanzhang pondered for a moment, but couldn't figure out what the new variable was, so he simply stopped thinking about it. Since Tianji girl had already said that as long as he left the Xia Dynasty, he would not have to worry about his life, then he would simply never go back. Anyway, Tianji Tower had blocked the secret for him, and his father should not be able to find him. Lu Yuanzhang hurriedly thanked and said, thank you, Saint. I have no way to repay the great kindness of Tianji Tower. If Tianji Tower needs anything from me in the future, I will definitely help. Lu Yuanzhen's words were just polite words. He knew very well that with the strength of Tianji Tower, it was impossible for him, a small saint, to be needed. If he was not the son of the Emperor Shenyu, he would not be qualified to see Tianji girl. Tianji girl said lightly, if there is nothing else, leave. Lu Yuanzhang bowed again and said, then I will take my leave. As soon as the voice fell, Lu Yuanzhen's body disappeared on the spot. Tianji girl still stood on the high platform, looking at the distant scenery of the primitive continent. She said to herself, I didn't expect this chess piece to lose its function so quickly. If I had known that variable was there, I wouldn't have had to spend energy on this chess piece. At this moment, a maid came behind Tianji and said, Saint, the owner asked you to see him immediately after you come back. As soon as the maid finished speaking, Tianji's body turned into starlight and dissipated on the high platform. Red Moon Dynasty, Emperor Star. Today is the day when the Red Moon Dynasty merges into the Great Xia Dynasty. Early in the morning, the domain lords of the major star regions in the Red Moon Dynasty have come to the square of the palace, waiting for the start of the merger ceremony. For the merger into the Great Xia Dynasty, the various forces in the Red Moon Dynasty have no objection. Even the ancestors who founded the dynasty chose to be loyal to the emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty. What kind of storm can these quasi-emperors stir up? Pei Tianlu, wearing a dragon robe, stood on the avenue in the square, holding a wooden tray in his hand. In the wooden tray were the jade seal and a sword symbolizing imperial power. At this time, a voice rang out in the sky, here comes the Emperor of Heaven. Hearing this voice, everyone in the square knelt down. Then, Lu Chen slowly walked towards Pei Tianlu from the other side of the avenue. The voices of the people immediately echoed over the square. Greetings to the Emperor of Heaven. When Lu Chen came to Pei Tianlu immediately knelt down and said, Pei Tianlu, the founder of the Red Moon Dynasty, please verify that I am willing to give up the throne and be loyal to the Lord of the Great Xia Dynasty. From now on, I will be the sword of the Lord of the Great Xia. Wherever the sword points, I will sweep away all obstacles. If I betray, I will be punished by heaven. Lu Chen took the jade seal and the sword symbolizing the imperial power from Pei Tianlu's plate, and then said, I accept your loyalty. As soon as Lu Chen finished speaking, he felt a majestic luck pouring into his body, and the people in the square felt that their luck was quickly passing away. But not long after, a new luck enveloped everyone present. With the arrival of this luck, some quasi-emperors present entered the state of enlightenment, and some saints directly broke through to the quasi-emperor realm. For a moment, everyone was excited. They didn't expect that just by changing their sect and joining the Great Xia Dynasty, they would get such a great benefit. According to their original cultivation talents, many people would never make a breakthrough in their lifetime, but the blessing of the Great Xia Dynasty's luck instantly made everyone see hope. Then the voices of people rang out again in the square. We will follow the Emperor of Heaven until death. Lu Chen turned around, glanced at everyone present, and then said, "No need to be polite. Thank you, Emperor of Heaven." At this time, Lu Chen immediately felt the sign of a breakthrough, and he immediately said to the people in the square, "In 3 months, we will go to the King Yun dynasty." People immediately said in unison, "Wherever the sword goes, it will be invincible. Wherever the sword goes, it will be invincible. Wherever the sword goes, it will be invincible." Chapter 1049 Lu Chen breaks through again. After the grand ceremony for the merger of the Qiyu dynasty into the Great Xia dynasty, Lu Chen's body immediately entered a mysterious state. At this moment, Tianchen World. In the royal palace of Black Dragon City, in Lu Chen's training room, the Taoist rhyme was flowing. Countless plants grew around Lu Chen, and in a moment, the entire training room turned into a sea of flowers. Immediately afterwards, Lu Chen felt that the universe in his body was expanding crazily, and his sea of consciousness was also expanding rapidly. Lu Chen knew that he was about to break through. He tried to calm down his excitement and used his energy to calm down the surge of spiritual power in his body. After an unknown amount of time, he felt that the aura on his body was rapidly increasing. The next moment, a green power turned into a beam of light and shot straight into the sky from above his head. When the green power entered the air of Tianchen World, it spread out instantly, and the entire Tianchen World was filled with the power of life. For a time, all the monks in Tianchen World were affected by this power and became more and more energetic. Some people who were about to die instantly regained their vitality after absorbing the life force that escaped when Lu Chen broke through. The world tree in Tianchen World is also frantically absorbing the power of life contained in the air. As the power of life continues to flow into the world tree, the external gravitational pull of Tianchen World is also increasing. Soon, the Flame World, which was originally several light years away from the Tianchen World, was attracted to the vicinity by the huge gravity of the Tianchen World. Lu Chen, who was immersed in the joy of the breakthrough, suddenly felt the approach of the Flame World, and quickly controlled his quasi-emperor clone to fly outside the Tianchen World to see what was going on. Seeing the Flame World crashing into the Tianchen World at an extremely fast speed, Lu Chen frowned slightly, but he quickly thought of the former Xiang World. Today, Tianchen World can have such a large area because it merged with Xiang World. If Tianchen World merges with other worlds, the area of Tianchen World will become larger, and the spiritual power may also become more abundant. However, you still have to be careful when it comes to the fusion of the two worlds, especially when the two worlds are about to collide. The collision is likely to cause a large number of casualties. Lu Chen is not a cold-blooded person, he is a citizen of the Great Xia Dynasty. Even ordinary people, he is not willing to see them lose their lives because of the integration of the world. Immediately, Lu Chen's body left the training room and came into the air. He glanced at the direction of the world tree, and then said to the world tree, "When annexing the world of flames, try to be gentler." After hearing Lu Chen's words, World Tree immediately burst into cheers. After feeling the joy of the World Tree, Lu Chen waved his hand, and a majestic force dragged down the Flame World, and the speed of the Flame World immediately slowed down. People in the two worlds felt very panic after discovering that the Flame World and the Tianchen World were about to collide, especially those living on the edge of the world. But soon they discovered Lu Chen in the air, and people felt relieved when they saw that the Emperor of Heaven had taken action himself. After the speed of the raging flame world completely slowed down, Lu Chen withdrew his power and let the raging flame world crash into the Tianchen world. Immediately afterwards, Lu Chen took action again, directly cutting off the land where the Tianchen world and the Liayan world collided, and then released the Dharma to drag the two pieces of land into the void. When two worlds collide, the people on those two land masses are not affected in any way. With the fusion of the two worlds, the area of Tianchen world doubled again. After seeing that the fusion of Tianchen world was completed, Lu Chen put the previously cut land back on Tianchen world. Although some ground shook during the relocation process, this did not cause any casualties. At most, some houses in disrepair collapsed. However, this can be regarded as minimizing the losses. As for those collapsed houses, the Xia Dynasty will provide some compensation and help the people who have suffered losses to build better houses. After the two worlds merged, Lu Chen's body returned to the training room again and continued to stabilize his realm. In the blink of an eye, a week passed. Lu Chen's third-level cultivation was finally stabilized. Lu Chen's body also walked out of the training room and felt the fresh breath outside. As soon as Lu Chen walked out of the training room, he saw a beautiful woman wandering outside his bedroom, as if something was wrong. Lu Qingkai was wearing a long green gauze dress, her fair skin looming, and a belt divided her plump figure into two parts. Her forward and backward figure made people wonder. There was a trace of eagerness in Lu Qingkai's phoenix eyes, and it seemed that she wanted to talk to Lu Chen. After Lu Chen walked out of the room, he said with a smile, "Qingkai, what do you want from me?" Lu Chen was not sure whether Lu Qingkai was looking for him or Lu Qingyun was looking for him. Nowadays, Lu Qingyun doesn't hide it at all. Every time she wants to relieve her longing, she will take over Lu Qingkai's body without hesitation, and then make love with him. Sometimes when he and Lu Qingkai were really having fun, Lu Qingyun would quietly replace Lu Qingkai, which made Lu Chen somewhat unable to tell who was who between the two. At first, it was easy for Lu Chen to tell the two apart. At that time, Lu Qingyun was not familiar with that feeling, so she seemed a little shy. But now Lu Qingyun is equally experienced. In addition, she is still using Lu Qingkai's body, and Lu Qingkai's memories are shared with Lu Qingyun, which is indeed a bit difficult to identify. Of course, Lu Chen doesn't care about these things now. No matter whether she is Lu Qingkai or Lu Qingyun, they are all his women anyway, so he should do what he should do. Seeing that it was Lu Chen who came out, Lu Qingkai was slightly stunned, and a blush appeared on her beautiful face. Lu Chen smiled slightly, then walked in front of Lu Qingkai and hugged her soft waist. "My beloved, what's the matter?" Lu Qingkai coughed lightly and asked, "Do you know the news that the great catastrophe is coming?" Hearing this question, Lu Chen asked in confusion, "How do you know that the great catastrophe is coming?" Lu Chen soon reacted. It was obvious that Lu Qingyun told Lu Qingkai this news, or the person in front of him was Lu Qingyun. Lu Qingkai simply stopped pretending, and she answered directly, "Qingyun told me." After being imprisoned in the meditation tower, Lu Qingyun originally wanted to wait for 10,000 years before coming out to find Lu Chen. After all, Lu Chen had already become an emperor, and 10,000 years was nothing for an emperor. But as soon as she entered the Jingzhen Tower, she heard the elders of the Jingzhen Tower say that the great calamity was coming. Although her saint had been abolished, she was brought up by the Dushan Empress since she was a child. The love that the Dushan Empress had for her was seen by the whole Yunhua Palace. Therefore, even after entering the Jingzhen Tower, the elders and disciples who were responsible for guarding the Jingzhen Tower were still polite to Lu Qingyun. It was precisely because of this that Lu Qingyun learned about the coming of the great calamity from the elders. After learning that the news was spread by Tianji girl, Lu Qingyun was extremely anxious. There was still 10,000 years before the great calamity of the universe came, and she would be trapped in the Jingzhen Tower for another 10,000 years. Wouldn't that mean that she would never see Lu Chen again until her body died? Of course, this was only secondary. What she was most worried about was whether Lu Chen could survive the Great Calamity. Chapter 1050. Are you Lu Qingyun or Lu Qingkaiyu? After hearing Lu Qingkaiyu's words, Lu Chen smiled faintly, stroked her beautiful face and said, I also heard the voice of Tianji girl. There are still 10,000 years before the catastrophe. I believe we can find a way to deal with it. You don't have to worry too much. Although Lu Chen was still a little unsure about whether he could survive the catastrophe, as a man, he couldn't magnify his anxiety in front of his woman. Seeing that Lu Chen knew about the catastrophe, Lu Qingyun was slightly relieved. It seemed that the elders of the Jingzhen Tower were right. As long as he was a great emperor, no matter how far away from the central star field, he could hear the reminder of Tianji girl. Since Lu Chen knew about the catastrophe, she didn't need to worry too much. She believed that Lu Chen should know what to do. The red sedan chair related to Lu Chen was no less than a holy weapon. Anyone who could be related to the holy weapon must have an extraordinary life experience. Lu Qingkaiyu then said, since you already know, I won't disturb you from practicing. Speaking of this, Lu Qingkaiyu planned to get rid of Lu Chen's claws and prepare to leave Lu Chen's palace. But the next moment, she found that Lu Chen's claws were tightly wrapped around her waist, making her unable to move. Lu Qingkaiyu turned her head and looked at Lu Chen with resentment in her phoenix eyes. Lu Chen said, speaking of which, my original body has been practicing recently and has not eaten for a long time. Hearing this, Lu Qingkaiyu immediately understood Lu Chen's implication, but she still pretended to be ignorant and said, I will ask the Imperial Kitchen to prepare food for you. Lu Chen smiled and said, no, the food made by the Imperial Kitchen is not as delicious as yours. As soon as the voice fell, Lu Chen hugged Lu Qingkaiyu's waist, and with a change of shape, he appeared directly on the big bed in the bedroom. As soon as he entered the bedroom, Lu Chen pressed Lu Qingkaiyu under him and looked at her with a fiery look. His claws gently slid down from Lu Qingkaiyu's jade cheek, slowly slid to her tight collarbone, and then slid to her fragrant shoulders. Lu Qingkaiyu knew what would happen next, so he didn't struggle at all, and just asked, Your Majesty, do you have a way to fight the catastrophe? Lu Qingkaiyu asked this for Lu Qingyun. Although Lu Qingyun was just a saint, she did control the method to fight the catastrophe, but that method could only be used by herself. She was now very worried that after she survived the catastrophe and survived in the new era, Lu Chen, the lustful man, would be gone. For her, even if she lived longer, it would probably be a curse. The longer she spent with Lu Chen, the more Lu Qingyun felt that she had some relationship with Lu Chen in her previous life. The memories she saw in the red flower sedan at the beginning have become clearer and clearer now. The first time she saw those memories, she thought they were other people's memories, but now she feels more and more that those memories are her own memories. She has not yet completely awakened her memories of her previous life, but she can feel that a very important part of her memories of her previous life is missing. In the past, she didn't know what was missing, but since the incident of the red flower sedan, she felt that the missing thing had returned. Seeing Lu Qingkaiyu asking him about the great calamity, Lu Chen, while showing his advantage of understanding people's clothes, answered, I haven't thought about it yet. When Lu Chen finished speaking, Lu Qingkaiyu's green gauze coat had been peeled off, revealing her perfect shoulders. Lu Qingkaiyu ignored Lu Chen's actions and continued to ask, that red flower sedan should be your Majesty's magic weapon. With that holy weapon, your Majesty should be able to survive the great calamity easily. In the current universe, Lu Qingyun has not heard of the existence of other holy weapons. Of course, it is impossible for a universe to have no holy weapons, but the holy weapons are too powerful. Even if a certain force has a holy weapon, it is impossible to tell others. When Lu Qingkaiyu mentioned the red flower sedan, Lu Chen paused his hand movements slightly. He chuckled and said, "To be honest, I also think that the red flower sedan may have something to do with me, but it has always been invisible. I am afraid that when the great calamity comes, the red flower sedan will not be by my side." At this point, Lu Chen's big hand slowly moved down and began to tease Lu Qingkai's interest. At this time, Lu Qingyun's consciousness entered Lu Qingkai's body and personally controlled Lu Qingkai's body. "Your Majesty has now broken through to the realm of the Great Emperor, but has not yet completely recovered the memory of the previous life." Lu Qingyun felt that Lu Qingkai's spiritual power had become disordered, and his breathing was also much more rapid. Feeling that Lu Chen's demon claws were messing around, Lu Qingyun did not force herself to hold on. If she had forced herself to hold on at this time, what would she do when she ran over to lean over Lu Qingkai? When Lu Chen was about to say something, Lu Qingyun snorted lightly. The next moment, there was only a tearing sound, followed by Lu Chen's voice, "It's not fully recovered. My memory is sealed somewhere. It will take some time to fully recover." Lu Chen planned to wait until he obtained the imperial luck of the Qingyun dynasty and then break the seal on the reincarnation stone at once. He had a hunch that as long as he could break all the seals on the reincarnation stone, he would be able to know the origin of the system. After all, he was an earthling, had read many novels, and knew many routines. He used to wonder if he was someone's pawn and that there was someone controlling the system behind the scenes. But as his life became smoother and smoother over the years, and as he awakened some memories of his past life, Lu Chen felt more and more that the system was probably created by his past life using some special power. As for the purpose of his past life, it was probably to guide his growth after reincarnation. Of course, all this was still just Lu Chen's guess. Before there was enough evidence to prove that the system was left by his past life, he would still be wary of the system. At this time, Lu Chen lowered his body and entered an intimate state with Lu Qingyun. Lu Qingyun put her arm around Lu Chen's neck and continued, "Hey! Do you have, me in your past life memory?" As Lu Chen began to move, Lu Qingyun had some difficulty speaking. Lu Chen said, "Not yet, but when all my memories come back, I may see you in my past life." At this point, Lu Chen smiled and asked, "Why do you suddenly ask this question?" Lu Qingyun hugged Lu Chen's body, "Just ask." Of course, Lu Chen knew why Lu Qingyun asked this question. He believed that Lu Qingyun should have noticed some connection between their past lives. Lu Chen suddenly thought of something, and then whispered in Lu Qingyun's ear, "By the way, I also have a question to ask you." Lu Qingyun said absent-mindedly, "What question?" Lu Chen blew gently in her ear, and while increasing the movement, he said, "Are you Lu Qingyun, or Lu Qingkai?" Hearing this question, Lu Qingyun's body tensed slightly. After feeling this subtle change, Lu Chen instantly knew the answer to this question. He then continued, "It turned out to be Qingyun." Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audio Wave to stay updated with our latest stories. And never miss out on a great listen.